The Falmouth Board of Health to order. Can you hear me okay?
No, that doesn't amplify it.
It doesn't amplify?
No, I think that just goes to the TV.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, would someone like to read the mission statement, please? Volunteers? Okay.
I can read it. The mission of the Falmouth Board of Health is to protect and promote the health, safety, and well-being of residents and visitors of the town of Falmouth. The primary functions of the Board of Health to achieve our mission are to prevent and control disease, to enforce state and local regulations, to promulgate local health regulations, to identify and protect from environmental hazards, and to advocate for a healthy community.
Okay, thanks, Amy. And other than FCTV and the health agent and the recording secretary, is anyone else recording tonight? Okay. And a brief statement on rules of behavior. Thank you to members of the public for attending this meeting. Public comments will be allowed at the discretion of the chair as time allows and will be limited to 2 minutes per speaker. Before providing comments, please step to the podium and use the microphone at the podium and state your full name. All comments must be delivered in a manner that respects others. And does anyone on the board or in the audience have any public comments on items that aren't on the agenda tonight?
So if you do go up and talk, this is Scott, health agent. There's a little sign sheet with a pen just so the recording secretary knows who's talking and what order. Makes it a little bit easier. Thanks. So it's right up there.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Our first item is Barnstable County, Massachusetts Alternative Technology Test Center Septic Utility Program. And George Hoyfelder has some opening comments on that.
Yeah, well, as many of you know, the town passed regulations regarding the implementation of IA systems in new construction. It's sort of focusing on watersheds that are determined to be nitrogen sensitive. And it sort of set us on a path of sort of fulfilling a future plan, which is yet to be determined, but will involve innovative alternative septic systems. Questions a lot of people have had is include what are we going to do with them, how are we going to track them, who's going to take care of them, how much will this cost, how do we really know that they're being effective, and like questions. So I requested that the Septic Utility Program, a MASSTC, and the Clean Water Center give us a presentation and hopefully we'll clarify what their role will be or what it could be, how we get to that optimum role for the town, because every town will have its choice as far as how far they want to go. With 14 watersheds in danger or endangered in Falmouth, I'm sure we're going to have quite a few innovative alternative septic systems. We have a limited health department staff. We want to take advantage of all that the county could provide us in that regard, and hopefully tonight we'll hear some of the details of that, including things like, you know, what will it cost, how far do they go, what are the options, what is the tier of options that we might have. So with that,
All right.
I'll wait for those introductions and go.
Thank you. So I am David Iorio Izzo. I am the program manager of the Septic Utility Program, and I always kind of like to start with where we fit in with Barnstable County. So as you can see up there, we are part of Health and Environment, and we are part of the Wastewater Division. The Wastewater Division actually includes MASSTC, which is our center where we test a lot of the IA technology. It also includes the IA tracking database, where we keep all of the various information about the IA systems that we have on Cape, also in various other parts of Massachusetts. Then there's us, the Septic Utility Program. And then lastly is Aquafund. Aquafund is kind of our lending division, where we help individuals with low-rate loans for sewer betterments and also to purchase new IA systems. Oh, here we go.
There's a slide-out keyboard underneath.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Just scroll.
Okay. So I also like to talk a little bit always about why we were created so that everyone understands kind of the thought process why the county created the Septic Utility Program. So originally we were called an RME, or Responsible Management Entity, and we still are. We just changed the name to really give a better understanding when someone sees it what we're all about. But we still are a responsible management entity, and all that really means is that we can be involved with every part of the life cycle of an IA system. So we really were created to support towns in any way that the town needed us when it was around these IA systems. Also, we were created to help reduce homeowner costs, and we do that, or we can do that through economies of scale. So, we can help, through that economies of scales to reduce individual homeowner costs when it comes to the operation and maintenance, to inspections, and also monitoring. We were created to strengthen local expertise, and when we're talking about local expertise, we're talking about the expertise of operators, installers, even engineers, and really doing that through a regional certification program, which we'll talk a little bit about later on. We help individuals with their decision-making by giving them information. I mentioned earlier the database that collects all of the information of these IA systems. Well, that information is accessible to homeowners, it's accessible to towns, it's accessible to DEP, and we're also working with a panel to try to kind of take that information and put it out in a way where individuals can utilize it a little bit more easily. We also do research. Most of the time, we are partnering up with MASSTC, and what we focus on is improving ways to monitor. Right? So we look at how can we save costs around monitoring, around sampling. And so we've done some research around doing composite samples versus sampling individual homes and seeing, will we get similar results? And once we're done with those studies, we'll show those findings to DEP, and hopefully it may be a way that we can go. And again, that's a way where we can kind of lower the lab fee so that instead of each individual homeowner paying a lab fee for their particular home, we can divide it between maybe 10 to 15 homes. And then lastly is that centralization, that IA database where we collect all the information about these systems so that, again, it's easily accessible to homeowners and to towns. So when we talk about the septic utility, now we know why it was created, but what need is it actually filling? And so the first is really that the current paradigm, doesn't really work that well. We see it firsthand because we do have access to the IA database. It's something that we manage. So many times we'll come across systems that weren't sampled or weren't inspected when they should have been. They're not performing. They haven't been performing for some time. And there's no real information in there as to what is actually being done with these systems to try to get them back to the way they should be performing. Capacity of town staff. Typically, IA systems fall under the health department, under the health agent, and to be able to look at each system to see is it working the way it's supposed to is a big undertaking, and not all towns have the staff that can actually do that. The cost and services fluctuating from operator to operator. So again, through the database, we see all of the O&M agreements with homeowners, and so we could see how much they cost. We see what's being offered or what's not being offered. And for most homeowners, that's not something that they are necessarily privy to. A lot of times you inherit the operator that when you bought your home, that's who was servicing the septic system, and you went with them. So, one of our goals is to kind of maybe stabilize that fluctuation. Also, the increased install costs of IA systems. So, I like to use an example from the Outer Cape. There was a homeowner that went out to put a new system in, and they got bids. That's not something that all homeowners do. In this case, they needed to do it, and they got 4 bids. Same system, same property. The bids ranged from $40,000 to $100,000. So you can see huge difference. I think they went with the bid that was $42,000, and they got a system and it was installed and it's working. So, there's reasons for that spike, but again, the Septic Utility Program could help kind of stabilize that. And then lastly, consistent monitoring, and not only the monitoring of these systems, but prompt action when the system isn't, functioning the way it should. Because as you can imagine, small problems can turn into big problems if we don't address them. So as we look at some of the examples of what we can do or what we're currently doing, there's some caveats that I always like to mention. The services I'm going to present today really are based on what we've determined are consistent from town to town. Also, the services can be customized. So what we're offering up here are examples, but it's not everything that we can do. We can actually customize it specifically to the needs of a town. And then lastly, for a lot of these services, economies of scale are essential to the pricing and the program of that service. And what that means is it really has to be a town-wide participation. Because if the Septic Utility Program, for instance, was to do O&M for one property instead of a whole town, then our cost would be exactly the same as what you find with operators, because there would be no economy of scale. It would be kind of like an insurance company having 3 clients, right? Like you wouldn't have the stability of the price throughout all of the clients. So the example of services that we can do or that we're already doing, the first one is sampling and inspecting. So this is mostly for doing this for other businesses, so being this neutral third party that goes out and inspects and samples. We do this a lot for companies that are provisional, so they're trying to get general use approval. So instead of them going out and doing this themselves, they hire us to do it, so that when the data is seen by DEP knows that it was us doing it. It was a neutral third party. Currently, we do this all over the Cape, and we also started doing this on the Vineyard in September of last year. So we go out and basically we sample and inspect systems. Comprehensive operation and maintenance oversight. So this is where a town wants the SUP to be responsible for that oversight for all of the O&M of IA systems within your town. This doesn't necessarily mean that we would actually do all the O&M, because we don't necessarily want to put operators out of business, but we would have the oversight. So we would do some of the work, we would outsource some of the other work, but ultimately it would be our responsibility to make sure it's being done. Installation oversight kind of works similarly. It would be where we would be kind of like a construction manager. We make sure these systems are being installed correctly. IA systems are not Title V systems. There are differences to them. They weigh more, generally speaking. So, if they're not installed correctly, you could have a system that doesn't work even before it's turned on. The enhanced IA database oversight. And I'll talk a little bit about that next. But currently, besides having the database, the only service that we provide towns is we make sure there's an O&M contract in place for every IA system. And that's a mandate from DEP. And we make sure that there is one. If there isn't one, then we'll reach out to the homeowner, or we'll reach out to the operator and try to reestablish that contract. And if we can't, usually after 3 tries, then we refer it back to the town, and then the town enforces it. The enhanced IA database oversight takes it a step further, and I'm going to talk about what we do when we offer that service. And then lastly is the certification and education that I mentioned earlier. And again, we realized that there was a huge disconnect with how that was done currently for operators. Operators currently have to reach out to a technology company and ask to be certified in their technology. We realized that those companies, while they're really good at teaching about their specific technology, they don't really talk about an IA system in how it operates really in conjunction with all the other elements of that system once it's out there. And also, as more of these IA systems are installed, that process really becomes impractical when it's one-on-one. It's more efficient if you have a classroom situation where people can come and everyone can learn about the technology and also learn about being an operator and an installer of these systems. So I mentioned a little bit about the IA database and the SUP oversight. So currently, this is what it looks like right now. It is a centralized system for tracking. It does contain all the information that I mentioned before. It was established in 2006. It went through an overhaul in 2015, a major overhaul, and now we are going through a multi-phase revamp. The first phase we are completed with. It was focused for the operators to make it easier for them to use, and now we're starting with municipalities and also the administrative side. Hopefully, we'll be done with it by the end of 2026. It includes all the Cape towns. It includes Dukes County, it includes Nantucket, and also several towns off Cape. We have more towns off Cape that want to join. We've put that off for a while. We want to make sure that we're focusing on Cape Cod, but eventually we'll probably add them to the database as well. It maintains lots of information. Some of the information that it maintains is the property information, permit, system specifications, the O&M contracts, inspections, and lab results. And then we, again, currently we use the database really just to make sure that there's an O&M contract in place. That's how we utilize it for the towns. And there is a fee that is associated with that. I believe it's $60 currently per year per home. And then that's charged to the operator. And typically, if you look at your O&M contracts at home, you'll see there's a $60 fee in it because they usually then charge the customer for that. So when we look at the future of what we can offer, we call it the enhanced oversight. And so what that includes, besides making sure there's an O&M contract in place, now we also look to make sure if it's being sampled on time, if the parameters and that it should be sampled for, and those parameters could be ones set by the town. They're obviously the ones also set by DEP. We make sure that they've all been tested for. And then if some of those parameters are not within the range that they should be for that system, then we reach out to the operator and try to discern why, and what have they done to correct that situation. So we really become more of a technical partner to the local health department, more so than we are now. Now we're being more administrative in what we do with towns. This really is becoming a technical partner. And again, we would communicate 3 to 4 times, depending on how many times the town would want us to do that. And if we have any unresolved issues, then we refer it back to the town for enforcement. And then Ali is just going to speak briefly about the certification program.
Hi, I'm Allie Nicolosi. I'm the project assistant for the Septic Utility Program. So me and David have been really spearheading a regional certification program with URI and MASSTC as partners. We're currently developing what is a foundational certification course. So it covers the general practices and procedures for operation and maintenance of IA systems, and it covers things like site assessment, safety for operators, how to communicate with homeowners, and then goes a little bit in depth about the different technologies, not specific companies, but just overall general technologies that exist out in the field and what we see within the region. The current class that we actually are going to be piloting this March is a 16-hour class targeted for operators, engineers, and town agents. And it's basically to just help build a skilled workforce and support those operators that are already existent or who are interested in getting into the field, but give them a general understanding of the systems that we're going to be working with. And this, like David was saying, we hope to expand upon and invite technology-specific companies to come into our site and actually teach a group of individuals their specific checklists and maintenance procedures in addition to this generalized course.
And I did forget to mention the enhanced oversight that I was speaking about, the cost for that versus the $60 cost for just the O&M contract, that's $160 per year. So that's the price difference of between the two. And I believe that's it.
Thanks very much. Thanks for coming and speaking with us about this. It seems to be quite an essential role, particularly going forward, as we expect to have vastly increased number of these IA systems installed. Do we have any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, could you go over a little bit more what the enhanced is? Because that's quite a leap.
Sure.
60 to 160.
Yep. So right now, again, for the $60 that's charged now, what the Septic Utility Program does is we make sure there's an O&M contract in place, which is a mandate. There needs to be one, so if there's not, then we, on behalf of the town, will reach out to the owner and to the former operator and reestablish a contract. For the enhanced, what we're doing is we're still making sure there's an O&M contract in place, but now we're also making sure that systems are being inspected and sampled when they should be. And if they're not, we reach out to the operator and to the homeowner to make sure that they are. We also look that they're being tested for and sampled for the parameters that have been established by that specific permit, by the town, by DEP, and make sure that they're also all being sampled and tested for those specific ones. And again, if they're not, we reach out to the operator, we reach out to the homeowner. And then lastly, if we look at those parameters and they don't fall within the range that we want for that specific technology, then we're going to reach out to the operator and ask them, okay, we noticed this, what have you done to resolve this issue? Why do you think this issue was caused? We want to have an understanding about this system. Why is it not performing the way it's supposed to perform? And again, we'll reach out to the homeowner to let them know we're doing this, and then we'll also reach out to the operator. And then every month, what we would send the town, because this is a little bit more involved, the town would actually get a spreadsheet showing this is who we had to reach out to, why we had to reach out to them, and ultimately, where did we leave off? Were we able to resolve it? Were we not able to resolve it? And again, 3 to 4 times, depending on what the town wants us to do for each of these items. And if we can't resolve it after those attempts, then we'll refer it back to the town. The town will know exactly what we've done, and then the town will have to, enforce whatever needs to be enforced.
Any other questions or comments?
How does a town move into that enhanced mode? What's the process?
So all the towns have a regulation that was written back in, looking at Brian, early 2000s to allow for the $60. It was written so vague that it doesn't really name what the service is. So that really is in place to allow for this. I mean, what I would think, it would have to be something that a Board of Health would have to decide upon and vote upon, probably have a public hearing about, just so that homeowners know kind of what they're looking to do. But that would basically be the process. I think the first step would really be to sit down with us to figure out exactly, do we need to tailor it a little bit different? Is there anything else that the town would want us to add to it? But that would be the process.
Has there been any thought to working with the manufacturers? I mean, you might have some very good players that hardly ever don't violate anything. We've got some new technologies coming up that look pretty promising. And, that seems to be like almost a penalty to them. They're doing it all perfect, and they establish some reporting mechanism of their own to the town that, look, here's all our systems, here's what we're doing in your town.
Sure.
Would there be any allowance for that sort of thing?
Sure, I mean, absolutely. Again, I think with this service, we're working on behalf of the Board of Health. So we would tailor it to exactly how the Board of Health would want us to do this.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I think certainly if that's a way to obtain that information, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, you just want to make sure the systems are operating the way they're supposed to and being sampled and inspected. You know, we're trying to prevent our situations that we have found where systems are systematically not performing, you know, and not being sampled and inspected. And so, you know, there's never a chance for that system to really improve or to really know what's the status of that system. And I think that's all this really is. It's like trying to give that oversight, that enhanced oversight over what really hasn't been done.
So I'm looking at your slide that identifies the present, and I'm looking at that last bullet of that says SUP uses the database to monitor O&M contracts and conduct required outreach before referring unresolved issues. That seems more aspirational than actual at this moment, doesn't it? I'm not aware that we hear from the county about systems that aren't performing. We do get lots of contextual information from George, for sure, but quite a lot of the legacy systems out there are not performing as intended, and that is an issue that we've addressed sometimes within this board, but it's quite challenging to manage.
Well, that last point is referring to what we currently do, and what we currently do is only monitor that O&M contracts are in place. And we do the outreach for that. And I want to say our success rate for that is usually around 95% of the time we can resolve and have a new O&M contract established.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that clarification. So how do we manage these legacy systems? We're going to have two different categories of systems going forward. The ones that are Bannert systems, they're identified by the state DEP as the best systems, and we do have reason to expect that those are going to perform quite well in the vast majority of cases. And then we have a good number of legacy systems. Some of those are in very important areas, in zone 2s, et cetera. How do we manage those going forward? How do we improve their performance?
I mean, I think, you know, it's looking at those systems to see, you know, are they performing at their best capability? You know, is there anything else that can be done to them to make them perform better? There may not be. And then it's looking to see how much are they affecting your goal in that specific watershed. Because they may not be affecting it to a point where you need to have that system changed. Or they may, and those systems may need to be replaced. So I think a lot will go into that answer that I couldn't really do at this point, because I think there's a lot of variables you have to look at to see, you know.
Yeah. It's very challenging in terms of capacity. Board of Health doesn't do that exactly, and the health department doesn't have staff to be addressing individual systems like that, and maybe the best answer is putting appropriate pressure on the operator.
Right, and that's kind of what the enhanced oversight, that's what our focus is, right? So the onus always is going to fall onto it falls onto the homeowner too, but it goes first to the operator. And then it's, okay, you know, what have you done? You know, let's try to troubleshoot this system. But putting the pressure on the operator and then keeping the homeowner informed, so the homeowner knows as well what is being done, because ultimately, maybe they need to fire that operator.
Right.
You know, I mean, ultimately it's just having that oversight, because right now, I think to your point, it's very hard for a health department to know how each individual system is working. And it's one of the reasons why this is one of those services that we thought is very important. Because while, you know, not every town is really ready to think of the Septic Utility Program taking over O&M for all of their systems, this is something that we can start now, right?
Right.
So we can get those legacy systems, we can have a better understanding about them now, before we start having to really install all of the new IA systems. And that's kind of one of the reasons why, as we went from town to town, we heard the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, well, what can we do? And, we do have the IA database. It has all this information in
Yep.
it. And using, other programs, a lot of this we can, be able to automate so that we have a way of checking to see, okay, what's not being sampled or inspected. But again, the manpower, the person power really comes with the troubleshooting. And that's what we expect. Most of our time will be focused on the troubleshooting aspect of this, because that's going to be dealing with the operator one-on-one.
And how about assistance to homeowners with finding a good quality operator? Is that something that the county could help with?
So this is our hope about the certification program. What we're hoping is a couple of things. One is we feel that what's out there right now for an operator to be certified by the state to do their job isn't really quite enough. It doesn't really necessarily prepare them for IA systems. And so, number one, we want to have that information for them, and that they're certified and they've gone through this process and they've learned all this information. But then also, our hope is that towns will embrace it as well, and look to have certified operators be the ones that they want their town to use. Ultimately, we're also hoping that maybe DEP will see the program, and maybe make it a requirement or something similar to it. Because I think right now what they do require, again, doesn't necessarily prepare the person for IA systems. And we have an aging operator community, right? We have a workforce problem. We need to attract new people. And this is the other reason why we decided to create the program, was attract more people. We're going to be working with UMass as well to, attract people who are new to the industry, give them all the education they need, and then, kind of backfill that aging workforce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else? Can you clarify, you mentioned $40,000 to $100,000 early in your presentation. What was that cost for? I didn't quite follow.
That was for a system that was being installed out
Okay.
in the Outer Cape. Yep.
Okay.
It was an IA system.
Yeah. All right, thanks.
I actually do have one question. So you, in terms of the comprehensive management that makes, and oversight that makes sense, the question really comes down perhaps to the O&M, the actual operation of the systems, where the county can potentially provide cost savings relative to a private contractor, but at the same time, then now we have a government entity competing with a private. So how has the county done any, taken a look at this or performed any actual operations and maintenance in towns where there are also private operators?
So, just to clarify, our vision for it is really to outsource the work to private contractors.
Okay.
So we will have the overview to make sure it's getting done, but we don't want to affect the economy. We don't want to put anyone out of business. So we would outsource to the contractors. So,
Right.
and the benefit to them is then they don't really have to go around collecting payment, right? They don't have to worry about the administrative costs. And currently, what we're doing is we have individual O&M jobs that we do, but we're not doing it for the entire town yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Do you have any vision of aggregating the data? Like, we're talking about individual sites and tracking those very well, but you're also going to be getting a tremendous amount of information about operators, for instance, and how they're doing across the board at multiple sites. Do you envision sort of looking at that type of macro data to figure out if we've got operators that need more training?
I mean, we could probably answer that question now, because we do have all that data.
Okay.
And that's something we have to discuss. You know, I think we have to discuss in more depth, is that something that we can publish,
Right.
right? But we do have the data already.
At minimum, towns could do that. We could do that ourselves. George helped us identify one a couple of years ago that had systems that were not well maintained, and that's when we added to our regulation a requirement that they have a, George, was it a level, what operator?
Level 4.
Level 4 operator, grade 4.
That's
Yeah.
required most of the denied systems anyhow.
Okay, any questions or comments from the audience? Go ahead, Mr. Lighton.
If you could come up to the podium. Is this a question? Anything.
Yeah, 'cause
Sorry.
it's the price we pay for this beautiful new room.
Steve Layton, Precinct 1. You were very clear about your fees. I assume they're small compared to typical O&M fees. Could you give us some idea of an average and range of the O&M fees that you've seen?
So
You'll have to step up to the microphone.
Sorry about that. So the fees, I hate giving ranges because it involves, not all operators do the same amount or include the same amount in their fees. So most of the fees do not include the labs. And I want to say on the higher end, we look at around 2,000. And that probably includes most. That includes typically all of the going out to do the inspections and the samplings. A lot of times it also includes some minor part replacements, like pumps and hoses and things of that nature. And I think the lowest we see is like 800, 500?
For seasonal.
Yeah. And typically that will just be like for a seasonal home, doesn't include any type of replacement parts or anything like that. A lot of times we see fees that are like per visit fees as well.
And then lab fees would be in addition.
Lab fees are usually always an addition, yeah.
What do those tend to be?
165, 185, I think,
Per sampling event?
per sampling event typically.
Okay, 2 to 4 of those per year. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Go ahead.
Mateo Hanley, Precinct 6. I was at the Water Quality Management Committee meeting where the Barnstable SUP came, and that was last year. I think the town has been kind of dragging their feet and a little bit of resistant against, joining this program. I think it's time that, we make a decision as a town, and just, I can see that the health agent does a great job, but this would be, management and oversight of the amount of IA systems that the town is looking at mandating in the next couple of years. The water quality with their watershed plan is looking at 7,000 systems. That's not even talking about the regulation that was just passed at the recent town meeting. We need to get behind this and start doing something, whether the town of Falmouth forms its own SUP, or the town of Falmouth joins the Barnstable SUP and kind of standards that. I would like to see some kind of standardization. The standardization, the training, the education is going to make IAs more affordable. And when you have an entity that's kind of going and saying like, well, why is your price high? The people are going to get a better price because you have this entity that's watching out for the public. The town of Falmouth right now is paying for a nitrogen offset plan in West Falmouth. They're paying to offset their nitrogen in the West Falmouth watershed. So hundreds of thousands of dollars is being given to the Buzzards Bay Coalition to do this same exact thing in the West Falmouth watershed. And I know Coram Peterson was looking for the same thing in the North Falmouth watershed. So if the town of Falmouth had joined this SUP or formed their own SUP, that couple $100,000s of dollars that is going into this nitrogen offset plan could go to fund this. And it's not coming out of the taxpayer's wallet. It already came out of the wallet. It's just being kept in town. It's being kept in the county. So, I really appreciate, this presentation. I really have a lot of respect for MASSTC, and I have a lot of respect for the Board of Health. I know you guys are going to come up with the best solution that's looking out for everyone in this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, let's move on to our next agenda item, which is also from the MASSTC, and it's related to performance data review on the same database we've been talking about.
So, were there questions about that? That was a little bit uncertain. Do you have questions about that?
Okay.
I mean, I
Yeah.
can,
Yeah.
I gave a bit of an overview of the IA database. Did you need more information on that?
Last meeting, we had a discussion. George brought to us data on a particular system and its performance. And the board began to identify data types and data outputs that would be very useful to the town to have. And so we could go into those, and Amy, not to put you on the spot, but I know you were identifying some of them. Do you have a list?
I was identifying some of.
The data outputs that we would like from this database. Does that not
I
ring a
believe the
bell?
one thing we talked about the most was water
I know what you're
use
talking
piece.
about. Yeah, I wrote a list for
Right.
you, and, yeah,
That's right.
that's right. You
So
have the
we were
list.
wondering, I mean, when we access the data from the county, one thing our regulation allows is somebody to show that a high number might be due to something to do with water use, things like that. So the question came up, and I couldn't answer it, was are the data available for water use in the county's database? And are there any other things that the county has figured would be pretty important to have in a database to make our decision for us? Again, high numbers don't necessarily mean the system's not performing. If there's other things, other issues that you could know about, and the big one, of course, would be water use.
I mean, there's a lot of tailoring that we can do. We can, for specific systems now, we take the checklist from a technology company, whatever they're looking for, which differs, and we're able to put that into the database. So I can't see why we couldn't collect that type of data, water use data.
There would just need to be meters.
Right. Well, right. I mean, there would need to be meters, obviously, to get that information, but we probably could do that. I would say if you have the list, if you want to email it to us, because we're still revamping the database. We're still in that process for pretty much the rest of this year, and we're currently working on the administrative side and the municipal side. So this is a good time to know, what you're looking for as a town. If we can, accommodate that, then, this is a time for us to give it to our developers and let them know this is information that we want a spot to collect for
Great.
on the database.
I mean, the rationale, I mean, just to explain to everybody else, but I'm just going to reiterate, the rationale, of course, for collecting water use is that there's a big difference between a system that's putting out 20 milligrams of liter per nitrogen versus 40 if the water flow, I mean, there's no difference if the water flow is twice. And with the prevalence of low flow everything these days, the input nitrogen can be very, 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 very high. And even with what we really need to think about, I think, in terms of the watershed plans, is total nitrogen, it's kilograms per year.
That's loading.
Yeah.
So the loading of it. And
I think for these systems, it might be one thing the county could look into is interfacing with the water department records. Because particularly in the winter, you're not doing a whole lot of irrigation, so you could start really teasing out the lack of performance. When you go to enhanced, sort of looking at things, and you want to club somebody over the head for getting 60, you ought to know if they're using 5 gallons a day or 200 gallons a day. So maybe thinking about doing an interface with the water company for, I mean, that's what they did with all the DEP model. They went to the actual water usages and they started using averages over years. But as we really try to dial in on whether these systems are working in our watersheds and how much the actual load from a house is, the water use is going to be key. And nobody's going around knocking on doors to read their meter. The water company does it through automated device. So if we could somehow think, when you think about going to the advanced sort of oversight, that $100 extra a year, which I can see choking some people, they're going to say, what are we getting for this again? I mean, I remember they used to say, what are we getting for $25 a year? But maybe that's something, as you look into towns going into enhanced, is you're getting more sophisticated in the look at their water usages. Because all our models, all the DEP models were set on it, but they weren't that granular. And when you're talking about an on-site system, you have to get that granular.
You had something else, did you, Amy?
No, I was just wondering if you had the list, so we could, because it was a big group discussion, and we condensed it down to 7 or 8 bullet items.
Well, I can remember that one.
But it should be in a minute. It should be in a
We'll
minute.
find it. That's true, it could be in the minutes.
The other thing that came up, and I'm not sure, since we're actually looking at data, is the range of efficiencies in the same, coming from the same system design, potentially though with different operators or with different input conditions, is trying to tease out what makes some systems work better than others, even when they are the same design, so that so it's not strictly speaking the technology that's different, since we know that can have a huge effect.
Right.
But we know that there's a huge range across just the same systems. And so what is it about some systems that make them work really well?
Right.
And can we use that information to make other systems work well? So
Yeah.
I'm not sure. That's more of a research question, really, but
And thanks to our recording secretary for the minutes that also have the list that we worked on last time. We did talk about water meter readings, and then talked about having the database itself calculate monthly load and rolling total nitrogen concentration. So that's, something that's happening automatically within the database. And then also having the database alert and potentially report out to the town health agent when that rolling average total nitrogen exceeds the permit level for that location.
That's right.
Bingo.
Bingo.
And the other thing we thought about that would be a helpful piece of information at the time each property is set up in the database would be to have a field for the drinking water category, the zone that it's in, so that we can query the database and look at systems specifically within a zone A, zone B, whatever.
well, we might
Or even a
also,
watershed.
or watershed, or might also
Watershed, yeah.
proximity to a pond, for example, too.
Right, so things like, in particular,
GIS data.
sensitivity
Yeah.
things.
There's some already in there, that all seems, the GIS information all seems like that should be able to put that in there.
Yeah.
I don't see why not. The automated aspect we have to look a little bit more into, because I know we've had some issues ourselves wanting to automate some of the things, and the database just was not designed for that, to be automated in certain ways, so we have to use other software to do it. But I'll look into that to see if that's something that could be automated.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the right time to
Yeah,
enhance the
absolutely.
database if we're going to, right?
Right.
Yeah, especially once we have thousands of systems, getting an alert when they are outside of compliance would be incredibly important. And our regulation does have a feature that allows calculation of load to indicate compliance, even if concentrations are out of compliance. So that would be nice to build in as well, a load calculation that tells us, is it removing 75%, then therefore they're in compliance. You know, if possible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, we'll
the-
look into all of this.
The more we can make it something we can query and use for metrics. I mean, Water Quality Committee and all of us are going to have to, we're beholden to report out to DEP with what kind of success we're having. The more we can have the database do for us, the better we all are, the better off we are.
Sure.
Okay, anything from the audience? All right. Thanks very much. Appreciate you
welcome.
coming in. Okay, our next agenda item is 0 Tobey Lane, an IA technology approval request.
This is exactly what I was thinking, but I didn't even see that I had it. These are various operators.
I know.
Right, so here it is.
Yeah.
But we didn't talk about it,
Well,
so I'm not sure where it came from. It's just a.
Good.
yeah.
Good evening. For the
Evening.
record, Scott Michelli, I'm an engineer representing Matt and Margaret Naglin, who are the buyers of this lot that's located, address is 0 Tobey Lane, because it's a vacant lot, but it's at the corner of Central Ave and Tobey Lane. The lot is approximately 1 acre in size. It's long and narrow, runs from Central Ave all the way down to Salt Marsh area. We have had a wetland scientist flag all the resource areas on the property. I've met with conservation a couple times about this. This is permittable. We'll have to do a notice of intent because we're going to be developing in the Zone B of the coastal bank. However, I located the system well outside of any of the resource areas. So what's proposed here is a 6-bedroom home and a 2-bedroom ADU for a total of 8 bedrooms. We're proposing a Nitro 2KM system, which is designed for 7 to 9 bedrooms. So there's a system of 3 tanks when it gets to a system of that size. The first tank is obviously the septic tank, which will be 2,000 gallons, 2-compartment, 2,000 gallons because of the bedroom count, 2-compartment because there's an ADU associated with that. And then that's followed by the 2 nitro tanks, the first one being the submerged something tank, and then the second one is the denitrification tank. And that's followed by a leach field consisting of 7 500-gallon precast leaching chambers in series, surrounded by 4 feet of stone. I actually had done 4 different test pits in this area, 2 on this lot, 2 on the lot across the street, all extremely consistent. Scott was actually, came out and witnessed those. We went down 150 inches, no evidence of groundwater. It was all pure gravel. So we have well over, based on that depth, we have, I think I designed 6 or 7 feet of separation from the bottom of my excavation to the bottom of the design. So this is a request, obviously, for approval to implement this IA system at this location.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, George.
Scott, there's 8 bedrooms
Yes.
total, 2,000-gallon, 2-compartment tank. I'm trying to do the math there. 48 hours for the first compartment and 24 hours for the second. So 880. You're going to be up over 2,000 gallons there, I believe.
Okay, I'll revisit that You're probably right. The first size is not accurate.
Okay. I just wondered whether it was part of the permit. I mean, if it was
No.
part of, okay.
No, it should be sized that way, so it probably needs to be larger than that 2,000-gallon tank.
Thank you.
Have you thought about swapping the location of the infiltrators and the reserve area to maximize the distance to the resource?
That's going several other feet up gradient. I could look at that.
Oh, because of the inverse, right.
I don't know if that would force me into a pump system or not, or whether I'd have the right separation to the bottom of the excavation. So that's why I selected that location.
Okay. But it might be something to,
Sure.
yeah, no, I understand the inverse.
What is the distance to the salt marsh? I didn't see it marked on there. Is it because it's well beyond the,
So this is salt marsh. This is 100 feet. So if I just kind of do that, we're
several hundred feet? 200,
like another 300 feet maybe from the salt marsh.
okay.
I don't know any. Do we need to be 3 inches to grade?
With the inspection port.
For the leaching chambers?
Yeah.
Right, so you need to be, you need to be 3 inches to grade on the
Inspection port.
inspection port?
Which can be all the covers, right? If we just raise the covers to within
Yeah.
3
Right,
inches.
just raise the covers a couple,
Okay.
3 inches. You've got just listed as 6.
What's that? Somebody gonna make a
All right.
motion?
I motion to approve the use of an IA system for Zero Tobey Lane, lot 410100C-000, with the,
Provided
provided
that,
that the plans show the larger septic tank and that the covers be raised to 3 inches from grade.
just for the record, it would be just that the tank be in compliance with 15224.
Right.
And with,
Set of conditions.
And the standard set of conditions for IA systems.
and a regulatory limit of 10 milligrams per liter?
That is now our standard set of conditions, yes.
Health agent has asked us to specify.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Regulatory level of 10 milligrams per liter.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Anything from the audience? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is cyanobacteria and freshwater pond quality, water quality discussion. And this is continued from our previous meeting in which we discussed the question about whether water quality in freshwater ponds is a human health issue. And to start off our agenda, we have Kim Comart of the Ponds Coalition, who is going to give us a presentation. Thanks, Kim.
Okay, great. All right. So, again, I'm Kim Comart. I'm the president of the Falmouth Pond Coalition. I'm also the chair of the Town's Freshwater Ponds Advisory Committee. I'm wearing the Falmouth Pond Coalition hat tonight, speaking for the Pond Coalition. So first, I want to thank the board for taking up this discussion. Sort of emanated from a conversation that Kevin and I had a few weeks ago, and at the last meeting, the board agreed to put this topic on their agenda. And as I was leaving and talking to Amy, she said, it would be good if you could come to the next meeting with some information. about the freshwater pond, so I took that very seriously. So just, I was reminded that, the Board of Health's mission is to protect and promote the health, safety, and well-being of the residents and visitors of Falmouth. And as I thought about this and I looked at the specific sort of strategies to achieve your mission, enforcing, especially enforcing state and local regulations, promulgating local health regulations, identifying and protecting from environmental hazards, advocating for a healthy community. In September, we had a major cyanobacteria outbreak on my pond, Deep Pond in Hatchville. And it was the worst that I think anyone in our pond could ever remember. I collected a sample of that sludge and brought it to George at MASSTC the day of their ribbon cutting. And George was very happy to get a nice thick green bottle of sludge. But that meant that we couldn't go into the water. That, to me, was a health issue. And for the next 5 weeks, we couldn't go into the water. So that, to me, is sort of the definition of a public health issue, and it seemed to me that our Board of Health should be involved in protecting public health by helping to protect the health of our freshwater ponds. I won't go through this, but there's a lot of work that comes out of DPH, Mass Department of Public Health, about cyanobacteria, when an advisory is supposed to be issued by the town. And I won't go through that. I know Scott and probably all of you are quite familiar with this. And then there's a lot of guidance about the toxicity of different types of cyanobacteria, what the health effects are, and they're serious. Abdominal pain, headache, sore throat, vomiting, nausea, diarrhea, cough, and different types of cyanobacteria can produce different symptoms. Just parenthetically, we also know that dogs and horses and other pets, there's serious dangers of cyanobacteria, young children, elderly people. We all know about that cyanobacteria is dangerous. And if there's a notification, you shouldn't go in the water until we get the all clear sign. This is just a chart that shows there are about 24 ponds that are on the Falmouth Pond Coalition's radar. Most of these are great ponds, which means that they're 10 acres or more. Falmouth is blessed to have, depending on who's counting, 75 or more ponds. And we have 28 great ponds that are 10 acres or more. So there is a fair amount of cyanobacteria testing going on. You can see the purple in the third column. There's a fair amount of testing going on. Most of that is being done by APCC with support from the Falmouth Water Stewards and a couple other entities. And over the last 4 years, so I went through all of the reports that APCC has issued in the last 5 years, and you'll see that in 2021 there were 3 known, and these are just known cyanobacteria blooms that have been documented by testing. We don't know about ones that weren't documented by testing, but you'll see there's been a steady sort of increase in the number of documented cyanobacteria blooms over time, from 3 to 4 to 6 to 7 to 8 for the 16 ponds that are being tested. There are also 4 wells in town by Coonamessett Pond, Crooked Pond, Freshwater Pond, and Mares Pond that provide approximately 35% of Falmouth's drinking water. It goes a little higher in the non-summer months, closer to 20% in the summer. It's unclear to me whether this is an issue. I have to be frank about that. I don't know if it's an issue. But these are wells that the town relies on for its drinking water that are adjacent to ponds. So if the pond is badly degraded, if there are, so I don't know whether the water is contaminated. That would probably be a conversation with the water department. I feel very good about the health of the water, the safety of the water in Falmouth. We drink it at home, and I think it's well-tested and well-treated. This is just a map showing where those wells are. Very hard for you to see that, but these blue dots are where wells are. Here's just some pictures of cyanobacteria, recent photos. And this is actually the cyanobacteria that was on my pond, deep pond in Falmouth, in September and October this year. So in just thinking, and this was not any kind of comprehensive list, but it seems to me that if the Board of Health did get involved in protecting our freshwater ponds as part of your mission of protecting public health, you could help to regulate the inputs of these dangerous chemicals into our waters, regulating fertilizer and pesticide use, helping to enforce our Chapter 237, which has been around since 2012 and essentially is unenforced. I know enforcement is difficult, but if we had support from the Board of Health, that could help. There's a lot of education that needs to happen in Falmouth. A lot of people in town don't know that what they're allowed and not allowed to do within 50 feet of a pond, 100 feet of a pond. There could be more water testing, chemistry testing that you folks could require. You could mandate that septic systems that we just talked about being installed around freshwater ponds, that systems get installed, and when the technology becomes available, that those systems treat phosphorus. It doesn't make sense to install a Title V system that doesn't treat phosphorus close to a freshwater pond. It just doesn't make sense. And whatever can be done by you and by MASSTC and other folks and the Water Quality Management Committee to encourage all these companies that are building and installing thousands of IA septic systems, push them to develop technologies that systems that can treat phosphorus. Requiring DPW to service and repair more storm drains and address other drainage issues around ponds. Part of the low-hanging fruit here is cleaning out storm drains. We have 7,500 storm drains in Falmouth. 4,500 are on public roads. We have 7,000. 4,500 on public roads, 1,500 on private roads, 1,000 on state roads. DPW is the first to acknowledge that they are servicing a very small percentage of the storm drains that they should be installing. So to the extent that you all could help put some pressure on DPW, work with DPW on this, that would be very helpful. What about establishing a database for septic trawlers? A septic trawler came to my house, and this is my house, 2 months ago, emptied the tank. Like, why shouldn't a septic trawler enter into a database the address, the date, and the amount of septage that they took out, and record that in a database, and then send us and then the town database sends us a tickler message in 2 or 3 years, time to empty your septic. So, not complicated technology. And then finally, to the extent that you all can support the expansion of use of the urine diversion, which MASSTC is about to embark on testing of, composting, other environmentally sensitive wastewater management technologies would be great. I guess the bottom line, for me is the degradation of our waters, and especially the increased prevalence of cyanobacteria blooms, seems to me and to the Pond Coalition to be a public health issue, and you are the guardians of our public health. So we would really appreciate you being involved. So,
Great. Thanks, Kim.
Yeah.
And Just want to note that we have a couple of letters as well from members of the public related to this topic. We have one from Deborah and Paul Hennessy that's supportive of what, in general, what Kim has just presented. They note as well that our mission statement at the Board of Health is that our function is to prevent and control disease, and the pollution and degradation of a Shumat pond, and specifically in their case, certainly fall within the scope of our responsibilities, in their opinion. We also have a letter from Paul Scudder, writing as a concerned physician and full-time resident of Falmouth, identifying eutrophication of freshwater ponds and the algal blooms, as well as a public health issue, including toxins from cyanobacteria, effects ranging from mild skin rashes to serious illness, symptoms like headache, vomiting, diarrhea, and blistering around the mouth, fever and allergic reactions, as well as liver toxicity and renal toxicity and pneumonia and neurological complications. In the previous meeting, we talked about this issue, and I think there was consensus within the board, or not I think, there was consensus within the board that this is a public health issue. In this town, we've focused mostly on the saltwater ponds as opposed to the freshwater ponds because we're a coastal community, and perhaps the water quality impacts in saltwater ponds was more obvious earlier. But other than that, there's no real reason that freshwater ponds are different in terms of purview of the Board of Health or of the town in terms of managing water quality and environmental impacts and health impacts. I think Mr. Comart provided a useful list. It's not up on the board right now, but
Final slide.
I think some of those could be much more effective than others, and I think we should think about what the most effective steps are that the board or the town might consider for addressing the problem. Go ahead, George.
I think much like they did in marine situations, the first part was identifying the areas that are impacting them. The watershed, the surface watershed, as well as the groundwater watershed for the ponds. Because as you recall, when we decided to move on requiring denitrification systems, we looked at the areas that were truly impacted. I mean, you could say, yeah, that water is definitely going to that embayment. That embayment is poorly flushed. So I think the first steps, would be to starting to look at the 28 major ponds and some of the minor ponds, is identifying their watershed areas. We do it for wells. We do it for drinking water wells. I think the first step before we, for instance, require innovative alternatives that remove phosphorus, if and when they become broadly available, I think we need to know where they would go. Because if it's down gradient of a pond and there's no way that effluent is getting there, we ought to focus on those areas of the pond where the feed is directly into the pond.
Yeah.
So surface and groundwater watershed identification seems to be the first part.
Yeah,
And
that's a good point.
how we get the town to move on that. I mean, they had to with the marine situation, but if we're going to embark on something, it should be science-based, should be factual-based, and not just a scattergun, everything near a pond needs to be done this way.
And there's quite a lot of groundwater modeling already, obviously. USGS has been studying groundwater here on the Cape for a long time. There are a lot of maps, there are a lot of models. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a map already available that shows the flows to,
Certainly the flows, so then it's just identifying the true watershed of that pond,
Well, and then on top of that, deciding what the travel time
right?
that matters.
Right.
And if phosphorus is being retained in the soils, since phosphorus is retained in the soils in
Yeah.
a different way
Yeah.
than nitrogen, a lot of the modeling has been done on nitrogen because that's the primary pollutant for the marine environment.
It's pretty conservative how it moves.
Yes. Phosphorus moves in a very different way, and so it's very different modeling. That doesn't say that there isn't data
Right.
that we're just not aware of it.
I think, yeah, some of those things that we're talking about are going to take us a little time to put together. It does seem like there are a couple of things that we could potentially move on quickly, including regulating fertilizer use, some education, and maybe finding a way to work on the database piece.
which database, the,
Microphones?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, can you hear me better now?
That'd be better, yes.
Okay. We were just looking at the various suggestions on the bullet list up there and thinking about which things could be, sort of first tier, done more easily, more rapidly.
One of the things, the nitrogen bylaw is not, it has very large holes in it.
the fertilizer bylaw.
And phosphorus.
First, well, it doesn't mention phosphorus, but it also says that you can pretty much, if you use fertilizer, it's okay to use fertilizer for horticultural. So pretty much like anything, much less, the revisiting this as part of the comprehensive wastewater management plans in terms of the marine plans that we're mandated to do and we're working on would have a side benefit of helping the ponds. And if we added, if it were, since this is not our regulation, this is a town bylaw, it's not a Board of Health regulation. It's not something that we can just hold hearings on ourselves and modify.
Right.
It has to go through town meeting. We can advocate for something.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably past time to do that, since we know that fertilizer nitrogen does consist of a certain double-digit percentage of nitrogen pollution going into the marine environment. I'm hand-waving because I don't know the exact number, but it's also, I think, a very inexact number in any case. But it's very challenging. It would be very challenging to enforce that unless there's just a total ban.
Go ahead, George.
I think, and Kim could probably speak to this too, I'm also on the Ponds Committee, and we've looked into the regulation of fertilizers, which, remember if you remember years ago when the Cape Cod Commission was trying to get all the towns to pass fertilizer regulations before a lobby went up to the state and sort of put the kibosh on doing it on a local level. So the towns all scrambled to put together fertilizer regulation. And admittedly, the one we have is pretty 1 week, doesn't mention phosphorus at all as a nutrient. And it basically has not been enforced. In fact, many towns have not enforced it. So towns that want to further regulate that have to be very carefully legally, because that particular law that was passed in the Commonwealth does not allow towns to regulate fertilizer further than they had before that date when that regulation was passed. So before we do anything with fertilizer, we need to talk to council, town council, perhaps come up with a proposed regulation and see whether it does not transgress what the Commonwealth has as law. Because I know that that was the intent. The fertilizer companies didn't want to be regulated. They didn't want any locals saying, hey, you can't do it. And so there is some action on behalf of some towns, Orleans, I think, and is it 2 towns? Orleans and Nantucket are trying to get a home rule passed that would allow them to regulate. But we'd have to be careful about regulating fertilizer in that regard.
Is there any sense in which we could join with,
Oh, yeah. I mean,
with them?
Yeah.
we could ask our selectmen, which I think we're in the process of doing, to join those efforts to allow home rule to at least do some reasonable regulation of fertilizers.
Yeah, especially in the context of the fact that we're being regulated under nitrogen-sensitive areas.
Right.
And mandated under nitrogen to nitrogen-sensitive areas.
And it's going to put us more and more into a circumstance in which we're paying tremendous amounts of money to remove nitrogen from wastewater and then spending a little bit more money to put fertilizer down on the ground and add more nitrogen. So I'm wondering, too, whether, given that individuals may be paying taxes related to sewering, et cetera, whether that's an opportunity to include incentives to not fertilize. Maybe your taxes are lower if you don't fertilize.
Yeah, well, the enforcement is the
Document.
piece.
Yeah.
It is.
Because things are done at night, they're done through sprinkler
Everyone's-
systems that are in at night.
Yeah.
And we know, I mean, you'd have to know if you walked around some of the ponds, and Shumat is a good example where you can see some lawns going right down to the water, totally green. I mean, they're green.
Right, so the evidence is clear.
Yeah.
I mean, you just look at a satellite photo and you know which lawns are fertilized,
Yeah.
for sure. So then what do we do with that information, is the question.
Right.
But again, providing a carrot to comply with that regulation and maybe go further than complying with that regulation may be helpful, as opposed to trying to get someone to stop doing something they want to do if they're actually benefiting financially by not doing it.
I think the Ponds Committee has come up with some, particularly the focus being on education, because a lot of people, myself included, hate to be embarrassed about this, but you walk in, you want to put something down on your garden, and I don't look at the phosphorus piece, but there are laws that require vendors of fertilizer to post certain things. For instance, lawns, you can't use phosphorus unless it's a brand-new lawn or a damaged lawn that's being restored or something like that. And these signs need to be posted, and the Ponds Committee is working now at sort of really educating and getting some of the larger vendors in at least our town to make sure these signs are up, because that is state law. And we did a survey walking around all the places selling fertilizer, the hardware store, as well as some of the bigger ones that, job lot. There's no signs there that say phosphorus fertilizers are in a separate place. They need to be stacked separately, labeled, and there has to be a sign on the nitrogen part. So I think a lot in education, but you're right. I shake my head every time I see a green lawn. I say, we're paying all this for sewer,
Right.
and we're
Right.
just feeding this stuff right down into the
Very
groundwater.
directly. I like the database idea too, because I do think there are a lot of people, that kind of goes to the education piece. There are a lot of people who just aren't aware how significant maintenance of their existing system is and forget to get it pumped.
I mean,
There's some debate, I think.
Of whether that
Well,
really,
if-
I mean, you are going to remove that phosphorus.
You're going to remove a week's worth. You're going to
Okay.
you're going to take out the contents of what's in that tank,
Right.
Yeah,
and then it's going to fill back up and work its way out again.
so it really overall doesn't improve
It
the
keeps your
operation of the system.
from
It keeps-
failing,
Yes.
but once it reaches steady state in a tank, what goes in
Okay.
is coming out at a certain number.
Right.
Very little attenuation.
Okay.
As far as us maintaining, a lot of our septic is not dumped at our treatment plant.
Right.
A lot of it's dumped into
Hauled.
Bedford. It's hauled, it's cheaper. So for us to maintain it would be self-reporting by the pumpers themselves, would be the only way to gather that data.
Got it.
Going to the
Okay.
treatment plant would get us a percentage of
Okay.
pumps. But we certainly could do that, but I don't know how much effectiveness we're getting out of getting a week's, well, like a tank, 1,000-gallon tank or 1,500-gallon tank takes whatever days it takes to fill up, depending on how much
Okay.
water you use.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not going to be a
It's not going to
significant
specifically take out,
improvement.
I don't know of any study that says taking the sludge out of the bottom, it helps. It could almost hurt in some point because you've lost
Okay.
the steady state. Sort of,
Stability.
there is a
Okay.
bit of treatment that occurs in a septic tank, the sludge breakdown. When you take it out and you empty those contents, it needs to reestablish that sludge and stuff. So I don't know the effectiveness. I mean, we certainly can do it. It just might be a lot of work for a very little
Very
benefit.
minimal.
Yeah, and we,
I would
Understood.
say.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we could.
Yeah.
We could do that. It's just getting, it would be self-reported as well because we don't know where the septic is going. We certainly can get the data from the treatment plant, but that's not everybody.
yeah, go ahead.
I think one of the benefits of having this reporting and being reminded to clean your system is that, like, when the septic trawler came to our house, they will tell us if our system is working properly. And I think there are people who don't know whether their system is working properly.
Well,
And this would,
if I may, then it wouldn't be the pump, it would be requiring a Title V inspection.
it could be, yeah.
Right, because the pumper's not going to go to your leaching unless
Right.
you ask that person to check your leaching out. Otherwise, they're just going to send someone down to pump the contents of your tank out. So the more appropriate would be a Title V inspection to determine whether the system's functioning properly.
Bravo.
Well, I mean, and the thing is though, the challenge is, even if a system is working properly, it's still putting out pollution.
Correct.
Nitrogen and phosphorus pollution. So it almost, I mean, yes, it does, it's important for other aspects of health that your system work properly.
Right.
But in terms of the, steady state, the system they just need to be different, frankly.
Yeah, they're the major
Title V
contributors.
is not designed, Title V system is not designed.
Right. They work perfectly, and they put a lot of nitrogen and phosphorus into
Right.
our,
Well, they're designed for other reasons.
Go ahead, George.
I think one positive thing we can do, the first step, if we're going to protect the ponds, if the Board of Health is going to be asked to do this, which I think it's an appropriate thing for the board to do, we have to find out or identify the areas that are actually impacting the pond. So I think in context to the wastewater management plan that we have going on in the town, it's an appropriate request from the Board of Health to ask that within that plan, that the watersheds of the ponds or the influencing area to the pond be identified. And, I mean, you could easily do it by saying up gradient. The water flows are known because that's what those maps show.
Yep.
They show the direction of the water. So that could be a beginning point. That would take probably half of a pond area out of the direct jurisdiction of the board as far as septic systems go. But then to identify the surface watersheds, what's draining toward it, storm drain identification, things like that, that's different. But if we were to make a reasonable request that within the watershed management plans that are being done for nitrogen, that they include watershed plan identification for a pond, both the surface watershed, which would include all those storm drains, and because storm drains can violate a surface watershed by piping it
Yep.
through a hill. So, and many do. So I think the board should make that request to the selectmen to add into the watershed management plan an identification of sensitive areas of ponds.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
All right.
Read it, I can make it.
Yeah, well,
I'll second it.
we have it all recorded.
Oh,
But-
good.
Go ahead, Scott.
Is the select board or is it water quality manager that you might want to be sending that to?
Well, I think who steers the money?
I think it's probably most appropriate to the select board so that because they would need to alter the mandate to the water quality management.
They're the ones that set their mission.
Do we have a second on that motion?
Yeah, there was a second one.
Oh, okay. Any further discussion? Anything from the audience? Go ahead.
On this particular.
On this item?
This explicit
This motion. Yeah, sorry. I wasn't clear.
We're going to continue this discussion.
All right.
There's,
Is this on this? Okay, go ahead. Yeah,
do I need to?
Yes.
please, yeah.
Sorry.
Hi, Kathy Sturrock, Precinct 5, and in my spare time, I work on the board of the Garden Club and with candidates on their campaigns. To the current amendment, can we also kindly request DPW to service and repair more storm drains in conjunction with the current motion?
That's a good question, and it's an item that I wanted to move to next, because
It should be a
Yeah.
separate motion.
Because it's
Yeah.
not select board.
I would like
Okay,
to talk
I
about that, but
apologize.
yes.
No, it's great, it's great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's have a vote on this motion then. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so
Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, so we have this very helpful list from Kim. My sense is that some of these items would be very impactful, some maybe not so much. So again, we just went through the septic pumping. That's important for keeping a system running well. I mean, we could send notes to people anyway that say, hey, get your system inspected and get your system pumped periodically. But I'm wondering the same about storm drains. Do we have evidence that the storm drains are a significant source of phosphorus and nitrogen relative to the amount that comes in from groundwater and from
Just
direct
sheet flow.
atmospheric deposition? Yeah. Anybody have any information on that?
There is actually, I mean, so there, it is, road runoff in general can be very toxic. Not only because of the nitrogen, phosphorus, but all the other things that come off of a road. So there is actually a grant program from the state to install basically, essentially bioremediation. So, I mean,
You run it through a matrix.
essentially rain gardens. So what you do is it captures the road runoff, and there is a degree of bioremediation before it infiltrates into the ground. And I think it was been celebrated in the Enterprise and in the Cape Cod Times that, for example, I think it was Bourne students wrote one and got one installed. The challenge is that they're expensive. They work very well, but putting them in de novo, they're not cheap. That it does work very well. But and so that said, I mean, because the inference I have from the fact that there is a substantial grant program to install them is that it is considered a significant issue.
But for phosphorus or for other?
Yeah, I mean, I've been studying
Yeah.
nitrogen loading for a long time, and yeah, people focus on impervious surfaces, but that's because a lot of the literature and a lot of the plans came from urban areas where everything's an impervious surface, and that's where most of your runoff and most of your pollution is coming from. But on Cape Cod, we have sandy soils. Everything just percolates, and many of our storm drains go into a dry well that gets it has filtration through the soil anyway. I'm totally ready to hear data that refutes what I just said, but my thought is this is one of the less effective measures.
Well, if most of ours are dry wells and not direct discharge to freshwater, then, yeah.
Most
I
of them
think
have
it-
overflows. They're
most of
dry
them
wells with
overflow, and then
overflows.
Yeah,
So they're set for a certain amount of storm, 25-year or 20-year, whatever storm.
right.
But The ones I've seen, in fact, one right in front of Kim's house, it is a dry well, but it's got a pipe directly out.
Yeah.
And it's easily overcome because when that dry well went in, there were probably maybe a handful of houses around that drained to it. Now everybody's driveway, everybody's roof. So that is definitely, I mean, it was flowing right over the top of that.
Where does the pipe go, though?
Pipe goes out into the pond.
It does, it's a direct discharge, so that's a significant example.
A lot of them have
right there.
dry wells overflowing into ponds.
Okay.
So the Falmouth Pond Coalition and the Freshwater Pond Advisory Committee have been in an ongoing discussion with DPW about this. I wonder whether you may want to invite folks from DPW to have a conversation with you to help, educate this committee about the challenges of dealing with the storm drains and what they see as the contributions that storm drains and overflowing of storm drains may be making. We've gone out with them to various ponds. They've demonstrated what's involved in cleaning out storm drains. It's quite a process. There's one truck in town, which is a $500,000 Valcon vacuum truck, and they have another truck that they use. There are basically 2 people who know how to operate this. When I've gone out with them and seen what they do, these storm drains are totally clogged, and the water is pouring right into our pond or pouring into Jenkins Pond. So I think it's a significant contributor. I don't know if anyone's able to quantify it. They're only servicing a few hundred storm drains a year out of 7,000. And, I think a conversation with them, like with Jim Grady from the Highway Division, who oversees this, would probably be a good conversation for you folks to have.
We've looked a long time ago at percent impervious surface in some of the watersheds in Falmouth, and from recollection, they tend to be, say, 3%, something like that. So you think about the rainfall, if you have 97% percolating through to the groundwater and 3% hitting pavement, I tend to think we should manage the 97% that may have phosphorus and nitrogen concentrations that are as high or higher than what's hitting the pavement. So,
Well,
we need data.
We've got boat launches where water just runs right down from the road, right down the boat launch, right into the water. Again, as George mentioned, a lot of the storm drains that DPW is cleaning have these overflow pipes. The pipes flow right into the pond.
Yeah.
There's like 25 of them on Jenkins Pond.
Oh.
And there are probably, 5 on our pond. So that the top of the cylinder, when that fills up, it goes right into the pond, totally untreated.
Well, so I think what Kevin is trying to
Is that it's a small percentage
is that
of the
that
overall
of the
problem.
overall nitrogen loading is probably a small percentage. In
Yeah.
terms of other things going into the ponds,
Right.
metals, any time you retar a driveway and it just runs right off into those,
Right.
all of those other pollutants, yes, those are very significant inputs. And they're the majority inputs
Right.
because the soil will actually bind a lot of those. So a lot,
Right.
and slow down a lot of the movement of those. But in terms of nitrogen and phosphorus, which are not primarily coming from the road runoff,
Right.
they are less significant. So
But if you
they
think
heavily impact the pond, they may heavily impact the pond health,
right.
but in a different way.
Right. If you think of the 3 key sources of pond pollution, septic, effluent, fertilizer, and storm water runoff, of those 3, it seems to me that the easiest one, the lowest hanging fruit there, is storm drains. We're talking about stopping people from using fertilizer. It's a major challenge. We're talking about 90% of the town being on septics right now, and it's going to take decades to install these 7,000 iSeptics. If you do one a day for 250 working days a year, it's going to take 26 years to install those. So in the meantime, I guess what I'm saying and the Pond Coalition is saying, like, storm drains, this is not a magic technology to clean out a storm drain. It's not complicated. And if more resources were devoted to it, maybe it's 10% of the problem. Let's deal with the 10%.
Maybe. I mean, it might not be 10%, I guess what I'm saying. It might be less than that.
Yeah, it
in
might
which
be.
case,
I
there's,
think every pond's different.
yeah.
I think Jeff can speak to it on the Schumann Pond.
Thank you. I'm Deb Hennessy, Courier Road, Shumet Pond. And to add to what Kim's saying, my concern, and with the storm runoff water that you talked about, my understanding is that we already have to 75% design approval already done for the boat landing at Shumet. It's one of, they started this, APCC started with 20 different boat landings. Shumet was decided to be one of the top 10 in needing to be taken care of. They did the whole design, which did more impervious, from impervious to pervious surfaces. They would change all of the asphalt that's there. They would change the vegetation so that you have more of a carbon sink happening. You have pollutants being taken, the runoff pollutants being taken care of. My understanding when I looked it up before writing you the letter was that it's been tabled in 2023. They did, I think, a site in Brewster because it was less expensive. So we're going to be asking you for money in order to help solve the problem of toxins going into the pond. So it's not just nitrogen and phosphorus. You're talking about storm runoff where you're getting other toxic chemicals. And particularly with our Shumet, speaking of other chemicals, we're listed as one of the highest, I think the highest of 55 ponds that were surveyed across the state last year for PFAS. So that's the elephant in the room we're not even talking about, that the Board of Health in future years, certainly, I've got 17 grandkids and they're going to want to be in the pond. PFAS are a larger concern even than the cyanobacteria blooms. I'll stay out of the pond for a cyano bloom even though it's gross and mucky and yucky. But PFAS are what's going to, it's an up-and-coming concern that really needs to be something that the board of thinking about all of us in Falmouth being healthy, PFAS and water and pollution and cyanobacteria are all on it. So I'm delighted to hear you say what I wanted to hear tonight was that you make a commitment that all water in Falmouth is important, not just the estuaries we've already done, but our freshwater, it all has to be taken care of. We're one water. There's no second plan B for, our planet. So thank you.
Thank you.
So there have been a couple of, some of the information in some of the letters have raised concerns both about PFAS, but what I want to note is that two things with the PFAS and the perfluorinated material. One is that there's fish advisories for essentially all freshwater ponds, and they're based on mercury. And they're secondarily on PFAS, but the primary one is on mercury. And so, in fact, and that's been for a long time, and you should not eat there's specific guidelines, but if you are pregnant, if you're a child, you should not eat freshwater fish from ponds. Just sort of, I'm saying that as an environmental toxicologist. The PFAS health guidelines are primarily for ingestion, so drinking, and you would get a lot less from eating a fish. And the other challenge with the health guidelines, the numbers in the health guidelines are very, very, very low because they're based on 40 years of exposure. They're based on uncertainty factors that add another 1,000-fold to the exposure limits, because we don't really know. And so they're set very, very, very low deliberately. So in general, that PFAS should not be a risk factor that you should really worry about in terms of swimming, unless you're drinking a lot of pond water, which I don't advise, and for other reasons.
No, but I'm living right beside it, right beside the base.
Yeah, no, I'm not minimizing the problem. The challenge that we have for the environmental contamination is from PFAS is huge. It's everywhere.
You're talking about turning the filters on in the base again.
Yeah, I think they have.
And in conjunction with that, there's another part of those filters that if they turn that part on, it would help to take care of the cyanobacteria causing the phosphorus, I believe.
Since the plumes, I don't know what's in those plumes. There's a lot of.
No, but I mean, that they're saying that they can, if they spin-off positivity, when they turn those back on, is supposed to be that they can also take care of the phosphorus.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
But I've only heard that twice, and
We should ask Doug about that one.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I would, yes, I mean, the cyanobacterial blooms are of significant concern. And the challenge is that we don't know the triggers for toxicity. So you can have a bloom and it may or may not be toxic. In fact, you can have a bloom and it may not even be cyanobacteria. It typically takes somebody looking at something underneath the microscope to say whether or not it's cyanobacteria. The county does have the capabilities for testing for a number of different cyanobacterial toxins. I have not seen data reported for the ponds in conjunction with reports of cyanobacterial blooms, because it's pretty expensive tests. But the capabilities are there, and it might certainly be something worth exploring, either in conjunction with APCC sampling, but it's not an inexpensive proposition.
Could you just clarify?
When you get these cyanobacterial blooms, they don't necessarily produce toxins. So they may or may not.
They're identifying it as species.
They can identify the species. The species may or may not be toxic. First of all, the strain may or may not be toxic, and second of all, that strain may or may not be producing toxin at any particular time. And that's one of the challenges, is that we don't typically, warmer temperatures lead not only to more blooms but more toxic blooms. Nitrogen concentration will help the blooms go, but in fact the blooms typically produce toxins as the nitrogen concentration is decreasing, or the phosphorus, because the cyanobacteria become more stressed. So at least the literature is, again, uncertain and still developing in this. So the only indication of we know whether or not something's toxic is whether or not someone's dog dies, or whether or not we actually sample and test it. So
perhaps you're suggesting to test for toxicity, not just test for the particular algae species. That's a good idea.
Right.
We already do.
Go ahead.
Oh, we already do.
What's that?
Well,
Are we toxing
APCC will send a sample to the Barnstable County lab if they feel that they should.
Okay.
We rely on their expertise, because I am certainly not an expertise on the
So we're then
multitude of different species out there. So they'll kick it up to the county level. They'll actually contact the state as well.
Okay.
Maybe I should say it was another state than the county. But it'll be kicked up, and the state would say what they say, whatever they happen to say, and an email chain will go by if they feel they need to test it.
Do we know how frequently they are
I
shown to
could
be
have to
toxic?
their emails back and forth. I'd have to pull all the data. I do put all the reports on our website. I don't know if you know that. There's a website, and every weekly report I put on there, and then I do my best with it. It's complicated, because even though you have a high count, doesn't mean you have toxins. You can have no visible cyanobacteria and have toxin. And so when do you post? And where do you post? And not everybody's ponds have places to post. So it's, and you're also grabbing a 100 ml sample out of a very large pond. And when in cyanobacteria, Schuman's a good classic. It's worse on the Mashpee side, and then when we usually get it high, it's late summer when the wind starts to predominantly come from the north a little bit more often, and then you turn to have it more towards the Schumann Valley. The cyanobacteria hangs there more often. This year, it was everywhere, but it really it's not quite like the bacterial testing we do for fecal coliform, where it hits a number, it's over the number, we retest. It's a little trickier, and sometimes the APCC will kick the sample up or ask the state for their opinion.
And Scott, just for everyone's knowledge, the health department funds the APCC efforts, or?
Some of it. So some people have the Ponds Coalition, some people have associations. I was asked questions about it when I came to town, so I filled in the gap with town funds. We have a line item that's professional testing. So where there wasn't an association, so some ponds are more organized than others, I guess is a good way to put it. And so we sort of filled in the gaps wherever we thought we needed to. But not every pond in Falmouth tested. Right? We had Nice. What's the pond on in Sippowisset Road? It was a couple years ago. There's one on Sippowisset Road that's next to the, it's like, I wouldn't think of that as a pond that people would go swimming with. The one across the street from Lawrence Lynch isn't something that we'd necessarily test. So we just sort of, we test ponds as they come up, and some people have done their own ponds and they're sort of at it and they do their own thing. And we've filled in the gaps. So weekly they're done, and we get a report, and I put the link to the APCC, and people take their own ponds under advisement. So like Mayor's Pond's only tested down near the beach, but the hard part is, and I get this complaint quite a bit, is, well, I didn't get notified. Well, I don't know who lives on the beach. We don't talk to somebody who lives on the north side of Mayor's Pond. We would be testing at the beach and maybe posting the beach. But so it's tricky. It's inexact. I don't like inexact. I would rather have something a little bit more cut and dry. But it's a complicated science. Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of there's no regulations really per se from the state that you would say is like 100 milligram, with colony forming units, CFUs per, it's not quite that way.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Quick question just on the data. 2021 to 2025, was the testing rate the same across those 4 years? The same ponds tested at the same
Well, they're tested weekly. They could be retested. So if you want to go back, so they could be more frequent than that, but it's weekly by and large.
But it has been weekly for these
pretty
ponds
consistently
for the past 4 years. So the increase in positive results is not due to increased testing. It actually is an increase in blooms.
Yeah, and they're also, every year, it seems like what they're going to call bad and good seems to change a little bit, too, which I think makes it hard on me, is it's not, what's considered a problem, what's not considered a problem. Thresholds would be a better way to say it.
For posting a warning.
Sometimes it's a little different than others, and so it's a little tricky. It's a little tricky for us, anyway, I'd have to say.
Go ahead.
Yes, Mateo Hanley from Precinct 6. The cyanobacteria is really a symptom of a greater problem. It is a problem in its own right because it takes away the recreation and enjoyment of that pond. One of the things that I brought up to the Water Quality Management Committee multiple times, and it hasn't been addressed, and I will address it to this board because I really feel like it would be heard, is that we need to look at large nitrogen contributions in this town. What are those factors? We have nursing homes, we have hospitals, we have schools. A lot of our schools are close to, Mill Pond or Morse Pond, or, T-Ticket School is on like a wetland upgradient that runs into one of our estuaries. But one of the biggest factors that is currently overlooked, and we refuse to look at it, is we have a stump dump. We have a leaf dump. Both of those are north of Jenkins Pond. Jenkins Pond has algae blooms. It's no surprise when you're adding that much nitrogen and that much phosphorus from these decomposition that's up gradient from these ponds. But the Benito pit has been accepting the tear out from septic systems. Now, Scott McGann probably knows better than any of us. If you look at a tear out from an aged out septic system when it's compacted, it looks like gray clay. It's microplastics, it's PFAS, it's nitrogen, it's phosphorus. There's 4-6 truckloads of that stuff coming out when they're putting a new septic system in. And where are they hauling it to? They're hauling it to the Bonito pit. Then you're dumping all that nutrient-rich material north of Jenkins Pond. But you're putting it right back into the watershed. This town should have a lined pit that's accepting all these septic systems that are being torn out. I think 200 septic systems a year are being either maintained or replaced. And Scott's saying north of that. Where's that material going? We should have a lined pit that's keeping all that material from running back into our watershed, running back into our aquifer. Let's address the issue. We can't villainize single-family homes if we're not willing to look at the large nitrogen contributors. I know we need a leaf dump. I know we need a stump dump. But let's figure out some kind of solution to keep those nutrients from getting into our aquifer and causing algae blooms, in our ponds. These are things. In my opinion, I think the Board of Health should be the lead. We just heard from the SUP about centralization and standardization in the county and the benefits to that. We have the Board of Health, the Water Quality, and the Fresh Ponds Committee all working independently and then reporting to the Selectboard that has no experience, and this information is overwhelming. I believe, and I think that it should be discussed that the Board of Health, the Fresh Ponds Committee, and the Water Quality Committee should report to the Board of Health. You guys are the enforcement and the regulatory department over this health issue. The Fresh Ponds Committee and the Water Quality should both report to you, and then the Board of Health should report to the selectmen. I'm sitting here listening to people say, well, we should make a recommendation to the selectmen to tell the Water Quality to do this, when it should be coming to you.
So to clarify, our powers run from the state.
Right.
We have certain regulatory powers. We have no financial powers, or very few. I take that back. We can fine. But we do not control the amount of money that is going to be necessary to even design the watershed plans. So that is very, very properly the position, the Select Board in conjunction with town meeting. So we're a regulatory board. We can advocate for certain things, but we do not report to the Select Board. And the Water Quality Management Committee, the ponds committees are set up by the Select Board to advise them. So if the Select Board chooses, they could have them advise us.
Right.
But neither of those committees are regulatory or really have any powers other than those granted to them by the Select Board.
Right, but they don't have funding either. Each one of those, unless you know something I don't, is the Water Quality have funding?
They do. I mean, there's a couple of members of the Water Quality Management Committee here who could better comment on them. And but again, it's granted to them for use as approved by the Select Board.
But the broader point is a good one, that that we need further coordination between the three, and we're doing that. That's what we're doing today. And I presented to the Water Quality Management Committee last month, and George is on the Ponds Coalition as well. And you go to the Water Quality Management Committee meetings too, don't you? Yeah.
As does George.
Yeah.
Other George, who isn't here.
Yeah. So there is coordination, and it's well understood that ultimately it will be the Board of Health that will actually make the regulations that implement what the Water Quality Management Committee puts together. So yeah, thanks. Those are good points. And go ahead, George.
I'd just like to remind the folks in the room, because we're focused on phosphorus and ponds. The Board of Health, primarily, I'd say 90% of our work is septic systems, but we have housing, you have your restaurants, you have all of those other regulatory things. There are community sanitation.
Smoking.
Infectious
Yeah,
disease.
infectious disease, smoking, right? I'll stay away from any animal control pieces that got us in trouble. But, yeah, so we have a full agenda when we meet. And this is important, it's very important, but it's one of a number of things that we deal with as a Board of Health. And our primary charge is really some health regulations that protect the community more in general. Food protection, restaurants, pools, bathing beaches, you name it, we're pretty much in it. It's not to say this is like, Uncle, don't keep loading stuff on us, but I just want to remind the board, the folks in the room, that the Board of Health has broad responsibilities. And most of our regulations are pretty focused. The weird one is Title V, because it's an environmental regulation, and it's given to the boards of health. If you look in other states, the Department of Public Health oversees none of that in this state and everything in other states. You know, so we're kind of, that regulation that is our primary disposal means of the town right now is really an environmental regulation by an environmental agency at the state given to a Board of Health. And that's not common across the country. So what you see in the board here, you're fortunate that there's some of us who know a little bit about septic systems, but it's a broad responsibility. I'm just letting you know that.
Well, I don't want to dump more responsibility. I think you guys had heard me talk before.
Yeah.
I'm always pushing for more transparency. I'm always looking for more sharing of knowledge. And I many times have spoken up in front of this board and in front of other boards and actually commended you guys for the way that each member of this board carries themselves and brings something to the table. And you guys think outside the box, and you really try to find solutions to everything that's put in front of you. You know, so you know, I appreciate that we're having this conversation tonight, you know, and what Kim Comart's doing with the Freshwater Ponds Committee. We're all working on a bigger, it's a big issue, but it's broken up into small pieces, and I'm trying to see if we could all work together to come up with a solution quicker. And like I said, I'd really like to see, I don't know if you guys wrote that down about the large nitrogen contributors, you know, the hospitals, nursing homes, schools, like how many of those are on town sewer? And then, because, like Lawrence School, if Lawrence School's not on the town sewer?
It is.
Is it?
Yeah, as is Morse Pond.
All right, good.
And the
good.
high school.
Yeah.
It's North Falmouth.
Was that?
North Falmouth and East Falmouth.
North and east are not. T-ticket is, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
But, you know, I was just using the schools as an example. We have plenty of facilities in this town that are large facilities that may or may not be on sewer.
Well, the other thing, too, is once they're over 10,000 gallons per day, we don't
Right,
regulate
right.
them at all. So they're under a groundwater discharge permit from DEP.
Right.
So
But the things we can control are the large nitrogen contributors, whether it's the compost facility next to Mahoney's, you know, that's contributing nitrogen to Walkwhite Bay, or, you know, the Benito pit taking in, you know, septic material, or our own leaf dump. You know, these are going to take changes that the town is going to have to make adjustments to and find a way to fund those.
Right.
But it's instead of us continuously going back to the homeowners and putting mandates on single-family homes when a lot of people are on fixed incomes, you know, this is a bigger problem, town-wide problem that should be addressed, you know, as a town, not just, you know, you know, let's not keep on going back to the single-family well for fix this problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have speaking of coming up with solutions while our colleagues are here from MASSTC, can someone give us an update on what the status is of technologies for removing phosphorus from septic systems? How close are we? With hesitation.
I was hoping I could just sit there quietly all night. So I'm Brian Baumgartel, Director of the Wastewater Division, of which the Septic Utility Program is part of, as well as MASSTC and Aquafund, as David mentioned at the beginning. So phosphorus technologies kind of exist in this funny place where there have been no regulations, so there's not a whole lot of incentive for technology companies to develop those products, right? There's no market. They're not going to work on necessarily pushing those products. Nitrogen across the country, if you look at it, has really received the bulk of the attention from regulators and the creation of regulations. So therefore, the companies that are focused on nitrogen have that built-in market that they can sell to. So the result of that is that there are a very limited number of phosphorus technologies available.
Yeah.
It's not that they don't exist. They do exist. But they haven't been deployed in volume sufficient for us to really say, this one works, this one doesn't, right? We've got one-offs of particular technologies. So if you look at the suite of technologies that are out there, there's maybe, 5 or so? That's a pretty generous number and for an estimate. There are some that are available in Massachusetts. There are some that are not available in Massachusetts. So to run through the short list, there's the FujiClean system. They have a version of their system that removes phosphorus. It's an electrochemical process. There's one called Waterloo ECP, which is another electrochemical process. There are soils-based systems, the Oakson more generally drip distribution in shallower soils, where there are silts and clays for uptake of phosphorus. There's another technology that's looking at how you could potentially add alum to a septic tank. There's a very limited number of these technologies available. As the Clean Water Center this year, one of our focuses will be on phosphorus again. So in the past, we've done a phosphorus project where we tried to, and George did a lot of work for this, get these technology companies to donate units so that we could install them in homes and see how they actually function. And that was a much harder prospect than we originally thought in getting systems out into the world. It was really hard to find volunteers. Some of the ones that did ultimately volunteer ended up being great advocates for the work that we do. But regardless, it is very difficult for us to get systems out into the world. And you might ask, well, why not just do them at the test center, right? The reason being, we can't do as much of this research on phosphorus systems at the test center because the actual load coming from a home is a little bit different than what we have at the test center in terms of influent. And we need real life data in terms of flows, et cetera, to be able to actually establish whether a phosphorus removal technology works well or not. And the other piece of that is we'll never tell you whether it works or not. We will tell you how it works. We will give you data to make a decision, but we're not going to say, FujiClean, do that one, right? So we need numbers. We need people to volunteer and come forth. So we're in the process of thinking about how we can get more of these out into the real world, how we can get more people to volunteer to put them in. But as I said at the beginning, the major problem is that there is no regulation requiring people put these in, so there's just a dearth of systems. We just don't know how well they perform. The ones that we do have data on, the data looks pretty good, with some caveats here and there. But we'd be happy to come in at some point and give you a better rundown of actual numbers and data on some of these technologies, and then you'll have a better education on how to approach it with those.
Yeah, thank you. So first, you can put one in at my house if you want. And I don't know if maybe there's other people here. Yeah, there we go. We got a few. Yeah, get several. So there's a start. So I'm just curious. Years ago, decades ago, we started seeing detergents that say phosphorus-free on them because people realized that phosphorus was a problem for freshwater systems where a lot of the wastewater treatment plants are not on the coast. They're in rivers and lakes and that sort of thing. So don't those areas of the country away from the coast, they don't worry about phosphorus in their septic systems?
So it's phosphorus is a complex animal. Cape Cod is a little bit unique because we have no agriculture. See, most of the country that is dealing with phosphorus issues, Great Lakes is one of the biggest examples of that. Some of the biggest contributors there are big industrial agriculture. So they don't even like look at septic systems. That's not even on their radar. Like we talked about runoff off of roads, like to them, septic systems is the equivalent of that. They're like, look at this, don't bother with this, right? There's also some debate over the degree to which septic systems contribute phosphorus to our groundwater. There's still a lot we really don't know at this point. Part of that is because we don't have regulatory concern or regulatory drivers to actually do the research and get those systems in the ground. So it's one of the major pieces that's missing. There are a ton of unanswered questions about phosphorus. Particularly when you look at, what's coming from a leach field, what's actually in the groundwater. The Schubel Pond project, which we've talked about in the past, which is a large project that was done by the Barnstable Clean Water Coalition right near Schubel Pond. They did a lot of groundwater well monitoring to see how nitrogen and phosphorus are moving through the groundwater. It turns out the phosphorus is actually at lower concentrations than we may have thought of in groundwater. So it's like the gift that keeps on giving, right? Phosphorus at low concentrations enters a pond, gets up, there's uptake associated with the microbiota in the pond, and it kind of just stays there. So we're adding little bits at a time, and it kind of cycles, but it never really leaves. It just kind of just stays there and cycles up. So, I always say, even if we sewered the entirety of our ponds today and shut off all the phosphorus from all the septic systems, there's still a latent load in the pond. There's still the groundwater concentration that's remaining. So to say just do septic systems, we need to look at the whole picture, and every single pond is different.
Thanks. Do people do people remove the sediment load? I mean, that's obviously an ecological impact, but seems like an obvious thing to consider. Just actually scrape the soil, the sediment away from the bottom, take all that phosphorus out.
They can. I mean, dredging has always been a possibility. It's just costly.
Messy.
And, so they'd rather cap it with alum. They do. They drop alum on it.
In some of the ponds locally, at any rate, there have been in the past, and I don't know if it's ongoing, regular harvests of plant harvests. And that would remove some. But if it's a regular one, it would probably act as a pretty good sink. So
I like that.
It's it's sort of person intensive. It's not easy to pull up those weeds.
I will say though, the thing that I see going around some of the ponds, canoe there in the fall when people blowing the leaves right into the pond, you might as well just drop phosphorus pills in there. They blow the leaves right down off their property into the pond because the wind's blowing, it's taking it offshore. And when I did the dredge at Kim's Pond, some of that material is notably leaf material and things, which are natural. I mean, you're going to have natural leaf fall. But boy, when you take yards and yards and start plowing them in, so a lot of landscape practices are adding to it. But as far as septic, Brian, good summary, really good summary of where it's at.
So if we have a huge load already sitting in there, is it do we spend a lot of effort and money on the new loads? Is it worth it? I mean, to the degree that there's co-limitation from nitrogen, maybe reducing the nitrogen input would help. Or do we just focus on what's already in the ponds, some of these solutions?
I think there's no one answer because, as Brian said, and I've seen in my career, and Bill, you'll probably see it too, is no two ponds are alike. It's not like a fingerprint, but it's pretty darn close, that you have to look at all the trophic levels that are in the pond, what's going on. So some of it harvested would help. Removing anything helps. But most likely it's going to be a whole menu of ideas. Alum might be appropriate in some areas. I don't particularly like it, but yeah.
Do you mind going up? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian.
William Kerfoot. I spent over 10 years with EPA on freshwater ponds across the U.S., evaluating them and determining how best to approach best ways for managing and fixing them. One thing that we do need, and that's the reason I'm mentioning right now, is you're talking about phosphorus, and we're talking about freshwater ponds. So I'm not talking about nitrogen-based. I'm talking about the freshwater that are phosphorus limited. And usually the key is you look at total phosphorus, TP it's called, for those in the area, to evaluate the conditions within a pond. You probably need more focus right now before your next years or the following years on measurements of what the actual total phosphorus is in your 28 ponds. There's a critical level. It's always given in milligrams per liter, and it's 0.020 for general ponds. If the concentrations are greater than 0.020 on an average concentration, well-mixed concentration throughout the pond, you have a problem. So you need to rank which ponds are the ones that it's worthwhile putting effort into, because they are at usually the higher risk levels. So in other words, you are talking toward this same aspect, but you can evaluate and risk rank your individual ponds on a phosphorus. These are for freshwater ponds now, on a phosphorus basis, on what their mean concentration of total phosphorus in is. And that usually, here in town you were already talking about it, but my first thought was, well, let's look at the 28 ponds at least where your volume is greater than 13 acres to begin with. So you're looking at some volume constraint, because you got a lot of small ones that are the 5 to 6, and it really depends. You can include those in this type of evaluation, but it has to be a situation where there's a real risk situation to include them. And I can help anyone. George Hoyfelter and I oftentimes have spent in the considerable times talking about these processes in the past, and I could talk with him or whoever is interested further on some criteria. There, I can hand you a book that EPA did that's about, I made an extra copy and I actually have it here, that's about an inch thick. That talks about the means by which you evaluate your freshwater ponds to make decisions on how best to approach it. And it's also, not best means also least costly, so it brings in the cost limitation factors, and if you're crazy enough to look at them, there's some graphs where this has been graphed out too.
So that book evaluates solutions.
Yes, and it dealt with how do I deal mainly across it was from the Chicago area primarily, but it dealt with the main precincts that are around 4 states. Michigan, Minnesota has a lot of freshwater ponds. Illinois, Iowa, so it did toss in Iowa too. And can be useful for evaluations, I think, here in town.
Does it provide guidance on how to get that average total phosphorus concentration? You'd have to sample around the year and across space?
Have some serious discussion, because you want to look at the characteristics of your ponds. And you do have to end up with what's a key characteristic is resonance time. In other words, what the resonance time is, which is inflow, outflow, and the actual volume. So there are some key characteristics that we haven't really talked about with regard to our ponds, that it's helpful to have that done. You can have a consultant, but you have to prescribe what you're looking for them to do.
Thank you for that. And can you leave that copy of the book with us, I guess? With George, sure.
Look,
Get some information on a Schumann pond, particularly to George.
Thanks, Phil.
Familiar with that.
Thanks very much. I do think we need to move on to our next agenda item. We had at least one motion passed, and I think we worked through a lot of ideas here, and we'll continue this discussion, certainly. Yes?
Can I just make one brief statement? I have to go.
Sure. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Good evening. I'm Paul Shear, and I'm a resident here in East Falmouth and president of Ashumet Pond, number 10 of 10 houses. And I appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate all this that I've heard so far. And I really like the last one. Like, you know, I would like to read that book myself. Because I'm retired now and I have more time to read like real stories, you know. I'm glad we're addressing this. I moved here with my wife from Sandwich in 2017, 18, and I go to the pond every morning, have my coffee, and over the past, I've seen this green goo gawk that I didn't see in 17 and 18 and 19. And now I see Ashumet made all the grades that I didn't want to see at all. And we have one of the biggest ponds. And so I'm hoping that that's a priority, like you said. It's the biggest acreage. And again, I just want to thank the forum and the crowd and the presentations and the attention going forward, because what's that expression? It ain't going to go away by itself. And we have to put money and resources and energy just like this to make it happen. Otherwise, there's going to be more green gook. And then that beautiful view that I first saw when I saw my house, that I said, that's where I want to live. Because I have a view of Ashumet. It's the furthest house away, but I don't want to see green gook. Anyway, I just want to say thanks to the attention in the crowd and the professionals.
Great.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you, and thanks very much.
There's one more.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, man.
Hi, good evening. My name is Audra Kelleher, and I am on Ashumet Pond. I grew up there. I was born and raised there. We are now 6 generations on this pond, and this pond has dramatically changed. I can tell you, chasing the dog that went into the pond that should not have gone into the pond, tackling the dog to wash the dog, I ended up with an eye infection, a skin rash, because it was at the peak of the summer, and it was just absolutely disgusting. I mean, I can't begin to stress how much Ashumet Pond has changed in my 54 years. It's sad. My great-grandfather was Wilford Wheeler. We're from the Ashumet Holly Farm, so all that land has been donated. And the government actually does all the testing right on our property. We wanted to make sure that that pond is preserved. So they come out, the girls come out a couple times a year, they let me know when they're coming out, and they're always asking, what else can we do? So I think this is a great opportunity to get the government to help us with what else can they do? What can they help with testing? We have, how many wells, 12? I think 12 or more wells on our property. I will say we have, when we were redoing things, I had a landscaper just to create the driveway without doing asphalt. We did cobblestone. Our grass, we don't have grass. We have micro clover. He thought I was crazy. I'm like, it's better for the environment. So we're always trying to think what's best for Ashumet and, our area. So if there is things that you would like to have tested, if there's, we can work with them when they're coming out. I do know that they come out a few times a year, and they're testing for days on end. So we'd like to try to, you've seen how many people are here and how passionate they are about our freshwater ponds. I fish in the pond. I raise my children to fish on that pond. We kayak. It's a way of life down here. And we've moved here, we're here full time now because of the beauty of our land. So if there's, clearly the community wants to help, and I think it's a joint effort. So whatever we can do to support you and what you do, because I know how that is. I work for DPH, so it's a two-way street. So we're certainly willing to do whatever it is on our end, and I think that a lot of that is education and getting the communication out there to the public. A little bit more, but we are happy to help with that.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. Go ahead, Scott.
You guys remember that you supported the treatment in
Yes,
January 8th, 2024 meeting.
we did.
You did support that treatment. That hasn't been done yet.
Which one?
That was,
Yeah,
We did,
Alum,
yeah,
for
we're, all you need to do is support it, which you did. So I did some research today. So we did vote to support the treatment of it, but I don't know whether they've come back to, they seem like they want to come back to us to ask us for the funds, is what I've been.
They being?
Mashpee. So Mashpee felt, because our groundwater flows away from the pond. So if you live on the pond in Falmouth, your typical groundwater flow is south-southwest. And Mashpee understood that. And Mashpee and the base was going to pay 50%. But the alum treatment hasn't happened. And we haven't had an alum treatment now for probably pushing 20 years, which is what's making, I think, it acutely worse now. So I think, I'm going to follow up with Ashley to see where we're at.
Right.
And kind of collect that in there, but.
Let's push that. I mean.
But it's going to need that treatment. I mean, it's at a point now it needs an alum treatment. And everybody knows it needs an alum treatment, but where we are with it, I have to just sort of follow up with it. But, we did that, the Board of Health supported the request.
Mashpee had agreed to pay quite a large percentage of it, and I think that they were looking for Falmouth to pay.
When they came to us, they said Falmouth needs to pay nothing.
Oh, support.
Well,
That 50% was good. That was why it was a very quick vote by the Board of Health. I think I have to say, I think things have changed, and I'll have to sort of untie it. Ashley Fisher's one that's heading it over in Mashpee.
Yeah.
And Mark Kasperzik, if you don't know, is retired, and she was dealing with Mark. So what I'll do is I'll follow up with where they stay with that. I believe, don't quote me on it, I believe that some correspondence went that we were doing some work on the ramp, which was sort of equal in value, and I think that sort of money part is where we're not the money people.
that sounds familiar.
Right, so I think we need to be at some point to figure out why it didn't get a treatment last summer, because the more it kind of like goes back and forth, you don't get that quick treatment. And when everybody knows, I think the base was willing to pay half, if I remember, and Mashpee was going to pay the other half. No one's come to me and said, well, you need to go back to town meeting or something like that. I haven't been told.
Okay.
So that might be the case. So we need to follow up on it. And that was one of the things that I did some research today before the meeting is, where are we with that? Because that was a while ago.
Right.
It was a year ago.
Is the base willing to do any of the dredging?
Yeah, that's not my area. You're getting out of my area.
They did create some of it, so.
In response to, I'm Ron Kleinberg. I also live on Ashumet Pond. And Ken is here from Friends of Ashumet Pond, which
Yep.
I'm a participant with. and also I'm on the Clean Energy Task Force for the base. The answer to the question, you were absolutely correct, that there was an understanding that the EPW work for the Bank ramp was going to substitute for the contribution amount from Falmouth.
Yeah. So it looks like it's sort of in the hands of MASSTC and getting that thing coordinated, though, in terms of the state.
Correct. It is in the hands of MASSTC, I think, to talk to you further on that. And I think the focus is the discussion about the boat ramp. But on the dredging, can't do it because of the freshwater mussels.
Can you identify yourself, please?
Can you state your name?
Ken Ursaki, I'm a Mashpee resident.
So
Friends of the Schumann Pond.
it really needs the alum treatment to acutely knock it down. It's a Band-Aid. It did well for about a decade last time it was
Yeah, I
done.
think it's been, what, 12 years?
Yeah, it's
Our
just,
problem is we have an enormous amount of legacy phosphorus that's,
so you're just sort of like sweeping it out, clearing it up for a while, and
yeah.
there really, I think, should be a way where if we know it's once every 10 years, why aren't we budgeting once every 10 years and figuring it out as an automatic instead of going this, like, why wasn't it done last summer? I thought it would have been done last summer. It's not really what we do. It's natural resources more than us, but I don't disagree with it. I think it should have been done last summer, so.
But we went to the base to have them help us with this, and they just said, hey, it's happening everywhere. It's not just a Schumann Pond.
Oh, I thought,
And then we had it 3 years ago for 10 weeks, and they stepped up.
yeah. They were doing half, if I remember correctly, right, the base?
Yes,
The base,
that's
50%.
May I add something? Marcy Clattenburg, I live on the Schumann Pond also. The base, or what the work to be done to add the alum, there has to be special surveys done, where the freshwater mussels are, where the exact places to be, to put the alum.
Yep.
So a lot has to be done. They just finished the freshwater mussel survey, so now that's ready. So this spring, hopefully, all conditions be right, they're ready to go. I think Ashley is now looking for whoever's going to do it, so she's sending out the
That's good.
request for proposal, so that's where they are.
Sometimes the wheels of government are not very fast spinning. Did I say that out loud?
All right. Thanks, everyone. We very much appreciate all of your input and participation. Our next item is nitrogen management cost distribution. In November, I think it was, we sent a letter to the Select Board suggesting that they set up a committee to evaluate how to distribute costs for sewering, for IA systems, for outfall pipe, all those things in an equitable way. It's a very complicated problem to figure out, and it needs some dedicated focus. The Water Quality Management Committee in December picked up our letter and wrote their own letter supporting our suggestion, and they submitted that to the Select Board. And so we have in our packet their letter. I was told at that meeting that the Select Board actually had not seen our letter. So the question is, do we want to send the same letter we sent before? Do we want to send an edited one based on what we see in the Water Quality Management Committee letter? And perhaps our best delivery method is just a direct email. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, well, we should figure out why it didn't get there the first time. Why repeat the same way? So that'd be the biggest question. Is there any reason why it didn't get to them?
I don't know. Does anyone know whether they saw the letter from the Water Quality Management Committee?
I don't know why we're looking at Jen.
I'd have to look at the Select Board packet to know what, where, if it didn't make it into an agenda, it's not something that's necessarily in the Select Board packet.
Right.
You can reach, but you can directly email the Select Board.
Yeah.
And so if if a letter is sent to the town manager for the Select Board, it doesn't
That's a good point. If it wasn't on the agenda, then it wouldn't be in their packet.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things they're deal with. The packets are sometimes hundreds of pages long.
Uh-huh.
And unless there's an agenda item explicitly addressing this particular issue, they may or may not see it directly.
Okay.
It would be good that, in general, if a board votes to send something, that they see it directly.
Mm-hmm.
But
A
that's
motion
not.
to send the letter to the select board individually, so
Right.
they'll see it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we've done that
The same
recently.
letter, I think, because the sentiment is basically the same.
Yep.
Yeah, it was pretty
And the Water
straightforward.
Quality Management Committee probably put their own flavor, perhaps a bad metaphor there, but, so I'd say send the same letter. That's my motion.
All right, do we have a second? Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that was nice and quick. Review and approve minutes, which we didn't get until...
Are we going to talk
My
about the
mistake.
substance of this particular letter?
He just made a motion to
No,
just
the
send
water
the letter that we
quality
sent before.
letter.
I understand that, but the water quality
Yeah.
letter, which was on our, which recommends a subcommittee include representatives from FinCom,
You might
Select Board,
want to
and
hold
Board
on,
of Health.
they're leaving, so that's,
Yeah,
So
I don't know if I have it.
I don't know if it, assuming that the select board sees the Water Quality Management Committee letter, I don't know that it makes any difference to edit our letter. It's just a...
No, he was
I'm
asking.
asking
Oh, I'm
whether
sorry.
we want to talk about the letter that they sent as to who should be on it and whether or not a member of the Board of Health should be on it.
They already sent it though, didn't they?
They did.
They
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, they already
I
sent
hadn't
it.
read it. And if we want to talk about it, this would be the opportunity
Time to do
to
it.
actually talk about the letter.
I,
And whether or not it makes sense, whether we want to internally, I mean, this is our only chance, this is our chance to talk about the letter. So my
well, I don't know if that's, I mean, yeah, we can talk about that letter, but I think the letters aren't really the main point. The main point is, does the select board respond? And they're going to respond in their own way, and they're going to make decisions that may or may not look like what's suggested by the Water Quality Management Committee. And then we will have time to discuss those deliberations as they go forward. I mean, I think, does it matter if we decide here, yes or no, there should be a Board of Health member on the committee, is what I'm saying? We can suggest it, but it,
Well, I mean, we can, this is, all I'm saying is this is our opportunity to discuss this without having to have another agenda
Right.
item on it.
so, okay.
So, I mean, it seems perfectly reasonable to have to have somebody from finance and.
Yeah.
Do we need is this something that we should be on? Is this something that an actual select board member should be on? I mean, it's a huge financial decision.
It is, it
No,
is.
the Water Quality Management Committee suggests a subcommittee because the Water Quality Management Committee's been spending a lot of time on this, FinCom, Select Board, and Board of Health.
Okay, so their suggestion already includes those three.
Yes. And that's just a suggestion, and the Select Board can do whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a member.
Seems reasonable.
It seems not
Sure.
unreasonable to me,
Right.
but there have been times also when George said, nope, Board of Health is out of this. So I just
Well,
wanted to check.
something like this, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
for the rental thing, when we don't have any staff to do something, yeah, that's when I'd say the Board of
Right.
Health.
That's
But
fine.
This is something we deliberate on all the time.
Right.
So I'd say, yeah.
But it's a good question whether a select board member should be on there. You just suggested that, didn't you?
It's on this
It's in
letter.
their letter.
They suggest.
Oh, it is, okay,
Part of
okay.
their- Yeah.
So I think it's appropriate for a Board of Health member to be on there.
I think
It makes
so.
sense for the Water Quality Management Committee, very much sense the finance, somebody from finance be there. Potentially as well as maybe professional from finance. I mean, we literally are talking
Yes.
hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I feel like having a select board member makes sense,
Yeah,
because they can,
absolutely.
yeah.
Then they
I mean,
can keep each other aware of what's going on.
It's a big deal.
Yes. That's what's that.
Because I'm sure a lot of the discussion will be with the public. Public's going to air their concerns. One select board should be there.
Kevin, there is a comment, or question, request.
Steve Layton.
Steve Layton, Precinct 1. Have two half hats on, private citizen and water quality. I feel guilty for starting all this, but I'm happy about it too. First of all, our committee will be discussing this Wednesday, and you're all welcome to come. You've all heard the old adage that a camel is a horse designed by a committee. That is certainly the case of our letter.
Yeah.
There's so many people that are into wordsmithing that to get anything written and passed, I had to just look the other way and let everything plus the kitchen sink be put into the letter.
It does read that way a little bit.
Well, otherwise, it would have been months. As you know, as Jed knows from his very nice proposition earlier in the year, the main point, and the reason I looked the other way, the main point was just to get the select board aware and started thinking. The details of who is on the committee are irrelevant as long as there isn't a deficit hawk in charge of it who has built-in authority to squelch some of the ideas. And so John and I, 99% John, 1% me, are working on the first half of it, which really only needs us, which is the costs, which we'll be presenting on Wednesday, and you can comment on it. Once we have those costs for the various technologies, then it gets to the very political and economic thing of how fair do you want to make it and how do you make it fair. And that's when I think the first stage is to talk in very small groups to people like Keith Schwegel, who I think is very knowledgeable and thoughtful, before having a big formal committee and talking with you guys too. But any way you want to do it.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, just briefly, I applaud the idea of trying to address this massive issue. I would put a plug in for consideration of having someone from the Freshwater Ponds Advisory Committee participate in this, because lots of people around ponds are going to be affected by these septic mandates. And, as we know, the 90% of the people in this town who are on septics have not gotten any subsidy for that. And we need to make sure that there's fairness going forward. So, and maybe it means the Freshwater Pond Advisory Committee sending a letter to the Select Board suggesting that we be considered, for inclusion in these deliberations.
That probably makes sense, since our letter's already gone in and theirs has already gone in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
that's probably the right way.
Couldn't hurt.
I do like what you said, Jed, about having a professional on the committee. Maybe the town hires an analyst to, I don't know, but that
Money.
is that, yeah.
I mean, the town has professional finance people, so, it might be someone who's helpful to have someone who's familiar with the town finances and the capital improvement plan, which does not have any septic, any does not have a lot of additional sewer in it. Other priorities.
Other towns must be doing the same thing. Are we thinking
But
about?
we have
I think we're
more.
in the forefront.
Way in the forefront.
I would say no, there's no other towns dealing with this sort of
Right.
No,
cost.
not
They're
this
They're
level.
not as, well, most towns are kind of really leaning towards sewer, or some of us say taking that first option of just put in the D-night. We're gonna be more hybrid than anybody, we're more of a world of hurt than
Yeah.
everybody.
And
so-
more estuaries.
That's my point, world of
Right.
fun
Yeah.
is what
Yeah,
I
right.
did. So I think we're sort of gonna be the forefront of it.
And, yeah, I mean, having a finance person, I mean, the town is bumping up against the Prop 2.5 limit, like now. Because we had 8%. You know, like everybody's grocery, and think about your groceries, think about what construction costs did. So, and we could only go up 2.5. So, if that doesn't go away, then, if Prop 2.5 doesn't go away, then we're gonna see annual overrides, just to pay for what we've got now, much less anything new.
You know, I remember, and it's somewhat timely, in that Bob Duncanson, does anybody know Bob Duncanson? He was from Chatham. When they were first looking at the sewer, they're looking at IA systems, they decided primarily they were gonna go sewer. But as they were laying the groundwork for that, Bob was smart enough in the early decision-making sort of steps to work the financial part, because that had to come first. Had to come, what could the town absorb? And he had analysis done of, you know, when all the loans were retiring, or whatever, the bonds were retiring, or all these things. He brought them all together before really the money figures could be worked on. And I think it's very important to have somebody who's familiar with when certain things expire, when there's, you know, there's all of those things we know nothing about, and some things that get done in back rooms, you know. So I think it's very important to have a finance person in there in the decision-making. Oh, well, in the discussion, to say, well, we have this retiring here, we have this debt
I think
retiring here.
we're way beyond the idea of using retiring debt.
Yeah.
We're way beyond that
Yeah.
stage. Because I don't think we don't have enough retiring debt.
Right.
Not to pay for this and the other hundreds of millions of dollars of capital improvement over the next decade. I mean, new police station,
Water pipes.
water pipes. Yeah. You know, Lawrence renovation, like schools, this is and that's, I mean, you name it. So, anyway,
I feel very uplifted.
sorry.
It's all right. Okay,
Money
so,
always does that.
Minutes till next time?
Thank you
Yes.
both for your time on the,
you could try it. I mean, I don't know if you put off the minutes.
Can I
Sure,
make a
we
motion
can do that all
to
the time.
discuss the minutes
Yeah,
at
you
our
can
next
continue it
meeting
Right.
rather than tonight?
Second,
Yay.
All in favor?
All in favor? Aye.
I do have one thing we gotta talk about in the next item though.
Okay.
What next item?
Any opposed?
Future meetings.
Jed
So we
didn't say
can't
anything.
have, since FCTV, this is our new venue, we can't just tell them every 2 weeks we need to sort of have this year's schedule thought about.
Oh, God.
Well, that's how every other board does it. They don't do it like every 2 weeks.
But our schedules are more complicated than other
I
people's.
get it. But can we come up with the best guess estimate? Like, think about your schedule for next time.
Okay.
Because it's hard to get this thing settled without schedule. Like, planning
Yeah.
board's the first and third, or conservation does the second and the fourth one, whatever it happens to be. The boards usually meet like the first Monday, or the first Wednesday, or the first Tuesday, and the third Tuesday. And so, can we get on a rough schedule and make adjustments then? It's a request of FCTV for doing this. That's all I'm asking. So if you
Okay.
think about that, maybe email back and forth. That's not an open meeting law violation. Talk about the schedule. So
Okay.
I think it's reasonable to just sort of think, do you want to kind of tell FCTV we're going to be every first and third Monday, or second and fourth Monday?
Question.
Yes.
Is it just the fact that this room became available that
Yes.
has, okay.
Okay, we're the only regulatory board that's not recorded.
Oh, okay.
Planning board, ZBA, conservation, Select Board has already been recorded. The problem is what you had, the Select Board Monday night, and Tuesday night here is planning, ZBA on Wednesday. And
In this room.
right, and then conservation's Wednesday, and ZBA is on Thursday. So we're not.
So
doing
we're stuck with
Fridays.
Mondays.
We were, right, and so when this became available, this is kind of what we should have been, to me, I think been recorded all along, because we're the only regulatory board that was not recorded.
Okay.
And so when this became available, because the select board's now, their new spots down the street, I think it's reasonable to come up here than the little dungeon downstairs. And so that's where we're at. And FCTV, for a nominal fee, can still send someone up here to record, and then we can have this archived like every other board is archived.
Gotcha.
That's all.
So we already set a meeting for the 26th.
You have a meeting for the 26th?
Okay.
If you can give me at least one more, then we can kind of like try to, on the 26th, spend a little bit of time on a more enhanced schedule. That's okay.
So February
We
9th?
don't have to stick with it.
We also don't have George T.
Correct,
so-
correct.
We don't what?
Well, we don't have George T. to get
Oh, true,
his-
true.
Right, but February 9th would be 2 weeks past the 26th.
Would that be okay with everybody?
Very nice.
Because I think we're going to have, we come up on holidays on the February too. I think Martin Luther King, right?
I think February 9 seems okay.
Is there, in general, it would be great if we could offset from the select board.
It would be, because I should have been there tonight to talk about short-term rentals.
Yeah.
I'd like to have been there to help.
So
when
tonight
do
was
they
a
meet?
conflict, so the 26th
26, this because.
is not a conflict, so
It is a conflict.
it's 3 weeks from now.
That's because
It's a
2
holiday.
weeks from now is
Holiday.
is
It's
a
a holiday,
holiday.
so, yeah. And Mondays are notorious for the holidays, so that we have to kind of like figure that out. What I can do is lay out some times and see if you guys would work, but it's up to you guys how you want to do it.
Well, we know what the select board schedule is. So I can look at the select board schedule.
Yeah, why don't we start there?
Yeah. And I don't know what it is off.
See
I
if
mean,
we
I
can
can look
see
at it
it.
on my calendar, but I don't have it off
I
the top
mean,
of my head.
I will send an email out tomorrow.
Yeah, circulate
let's do it
that,
that way.
and we'll see if we can do the in-betweens.
Yeah.
It can change, we can certainly change it, it's
Yeah, I
just,
mean, it may mean
we may have
be-
more or less, you know.
It may
all
mean that
five
we go
can't be
3
there.
weeks. Again, we do 3 weeks and then then we do 3
Right.
weeks.
Or if we can't if we can only have 3 that particular, you know, like, we just got to start maintaining. Bless you.
Thank you.
That was very high pitch.
What's that?
I like the high pitch.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Squeak?
Squeak is, I didn't want to say it.
Anything else in terms of future agenda items? Okay. Do we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.